Chapter 2269. Who would place hundreds of 10,000-year-old ginsengs outside and leave a useless weed surrounded by so many ginsengs? Wouldn't that be brainless? And that person, did he look like a brainless person? Obviously, it didn't look like it. Since he wasn't, then what was the use of this black fruit? Was there a need to ask? Chu Yang's only worry now was, with his current cultivation, would he explode from this black fruit? This consideration was definitely very realistic. According to Chu Yang's most conservative assessment of the black fruit, the power it contained was very likely to be 10 times, or even more than that of the heaven-earth mystery yellow fruit. Although he was currently at the level of a saint and had the heaven-level divine technique as support, he still might not be able to bear it. Once he failed, the consequences would not be a joke. Also, his cultivation was advancing too fast now. It was very necessary to stabilize it. Therefore he was desperately tormenting himself. Not only him, but Zi Sheqing and Mo Qinggu, Tan Tan and the others were also like this. If he rashly consumed the black fruit at this time, what if his cultivation level suddenly increased? What would the result be? It was easy to advance, but it was impossible to go back in time. If that was the case, he would not have the chance to make up for his mistakes in his entire life. Therefore Chu Yang's heart was really very tangled. For a few months, Chu Yang was almost completely immersed in the training ground without rest. The minister's crazy training during this period of time shocked all the higher-ups of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. After he went, he directly pulled Meng Wuya and the others to start training without saying a word. At the very beginning, Chu Yang was only fighting alone. Although Chu Yang's cultivation was only at the level of a primary saint, Meng Wuya had already broken through to the level of a saint. If he did not have hundreds of thousands of years of experience as support, he might not be able to cope with Chu Yang. However, it was also because of his rich combat experience that in the first few days, he really did train Chu Yang a few times. But after a few days, Meng Wuya's experience was almost completely absorbed by Chu Yang. Who was Meng Wuya? Once he saw that the situation was not right, he quickly stopped. This old man doesn't want to fight alone. Chu Yang was very happy. He might not be a match for them alone, but that didn't matter. Then he would fight 1 against 2. He directly pulled the Chrysanthemum Saber King, Li Guanyu, and the power of the 2 saints. Sure enough, they instantly suppressed Chu Yang's limelight. Minister Chu was once again trained. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. In less than 2 days, the 2 saints couldn't suppress him anymore. So, another person was added and it became 1 against 3. If this continued, everyone would attack together in the end. Even the lightning snake and the other peak celestial beings who had not reached the saint realm were pulled up to make up the numbers. But even so, they were gradually unable to suppress Chu Yang's momentum. Everyone was extremely conflicted. How can Minister Chu's battle prowess soar so rapidly? After the fight with Chu Yang, everyone felt that they were walking softly, and their eyes were seeing double. It was more than 10 times more tiring than extreme training. When facing Chu Yang, it was as if they were fighting against a mountain. And it was the kind of mountain that pierced through the clouds. It was completely unshakable. It was a kind of tired feeling of using all your strength and collapsing but not being able to move at all. Although after a day of fighting, everyone would discover that their cultivation had increased slightly after collapsing. No matter who it was, there wasn't much joy in their hearts. No one was willing to go through this process again. The degree of horror could be imagined. Now, the only one who didn't believe in heresy and still insisted on fighting with Chu Yang was the Chrysanthemum Saber King, Li Guanyu. Now, it was this guy who fought with Chu Yang in the first round. But finally, after being kicked a few hundred times in the butt by Chu Yang, he covered his butt and fled. Since then, his desire to compete with Chu Yang for supremacy had completely faded. In his own words, it doesn't matter if you lose a battle. Who hasn't lost a battle in their lifetime? It doesn't matter. Even if you lose again and again, you still have to keep fighting. This doesn't matter. But Minister Chu's method of attacking is too much for this old man to bear. This method is too despicable. And the Tang clan's third young master, who was on the side, said very amusingly, 3 flat balls are inferior to 1 round ball. And so, Li Guanyu was completely defeated. After a few months, Chu Yang's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. His progress was godly. Not only were others aware of this, but even Chu Yang himself could clearly feel that he had made great progress. Tribulation Sword Technique, 30 moves. In the past, if he used all his strength, he could barely use it once. But if he wanted to use it a second time, it would be very difficult. However, after going through this period of painstaking training, Chu Yang was able to use this technique twice, or at most 3 times. Now he could use this technique endlessly. He wouldn't feel tired. He also wouldn't feel the phenomenon of his inner energy not being able to continue. And the tribulation sword technique that had reached the peak level of the 4 ultimate moves, Chuyang could already use the 3rd move directly. And he thought that he had completely grasped the essence of the first 2 moves. This was undoubtedly a huge improvement. Zi Sheqing, who was also infinitely close to the level of a saint, would find it very difficult to take 3 moves from Chuyang in a real battle now. How could Zi Sheqing, who had always been proud and arrogant, accept this reality? She gritted her teeth and cultivated with all her might. For this round of cultivation, Big Sister Zi naturally wouldn't use Chuyang as a target. So, Tan Tan and Yao Ningning were in big trouble. After Tan Tan obtained the supreme demonic technique, his cultivation improved greatly. And after Yao Ningning consumed the Heaven-Earth Mystery Yellow Fruit, his cultivation improved greatly. Currently he was also at the level of a saint. These 2 were directly captured by Zi Sheqing and brought back to cultivate. Battle. In fact, rather than calling it a battle, it would be better to call it a practice target. Tan Tan and Yao Ningning had privately analyzed more than once that Big Sister Zi was looking for them. Was it because she wanted them to recover their saint physiques at an extremely fast speed? Every day Tan Tan and Yao Ningning would have an extremely strong impulse to commit suicide. They would rather die than live these days. This elder sister never knew what it meant to be merciful. Getting injured in her hands was simply more common than eating a meal. Tan Tan was more or less stronger and had more combat experience. Most of the time, Yao Ningning became the scapegoat. Yao Ningning's condition was simply too miserable. The injuries on her body couldn't even be sustained by her strong saint physique. Every night, she would be covered in bruises all over, lying on the bed while groaning, and letting Bai Shirshen apply medicine for her. And ever since Emo Qingwu came here, Bai Shirshen basically hung out with Emo Qingwu every day. Naturally, she spent less time with Yao Ningning. This was the natural attachment of a spirit beast to its master. No one could do anything about it. Emo Qingwu even unilaterally and forcibly terminated the spirit beast contract between her and Bai Shirshen. But Bai Shirshuan's behavior was still the same. Because from the beginning to the end, Emo Qingwu had never used the spirit beast contract to force Bai Shirshen to do anything. Now, even if the contract was terminated, the feeling it gave Bai Shirshen was still the same as before. There was no difference at all. Yao Ningning suffered a double blow mentally and physically. I don't care if I'm beaten by you guys like a sandbag every day, but my wife is still your spirit beast. The kind that can't be chased away even if you want to. What the fuck is this? Was there any justice? Was there any reason? Was there any justice in this world? Chuyang felt that his cultivation, power and vital energy were all more and more condensed. He felt that his vital energy was flowing more and more freely, and he could do as he pleased. Gradually, all his limbs and bones were integrated into one, and there was a wonderful feeling of penetrating through the canopy and soaring into the sky. At this time, the injuries of the bookworm and the painting king had basically healed. So, Chuyang had a new high-level cultivation target. To be honest, regarding Crazy Book and Painting King as cultivation targets, everyone except Chuyang was very worried. After all, the main purpose of these 2 people coming to Demon Emperor Heaven was to kill Chuyang. Now that their cultivation had recovered, and Chuyang had given them such a legitimate opportunity to spar, if the 2 of them were to accidentally kill him during the spar, then wouldn't Chuyang be in too much danger? Crazy Book and Painting King were both peak experts, and their strength was far from what Meng Wuya and Li Guanyu could compare to. Even though Chuyang's strength had increased greatly, and he could challenge those of a higher level to a certain extent, it was still an unwise move to challenge these 2 people so rashly. However, Chuyang persisted. Everyone had no choice but to ask the Wings King, who was still here, to stand guard for him. Then they watched on anxiously just in case. Actually, this was just an act of helplessness. With the strength of the Wild Book and the Painting King, if they really had the intention to kill, it would be difficult for the Wings King to guard against them. Even if they tried to remedy the situation after the fact and mend the pen after the sheep is lost, what use would it be? After the first day of battle, the group of people who had been on tenterhooks finally felt a little relieved. Even though Chuyang was carried back in the end, there was no danger to his life throughout the whole process. At night, after Chuyang recovered tenaciously like a cockroach, he recklessly challenged Crazy Book again. Crazy Book gave him another fierce beating, and Minister Chu lay on the bed again. The next morning they continued to train. Later, on the second night, even Crazy Book and Painting King were surprised. In this world, there really was such an unkillable cockroach. Under such crazy continuous attacks, this guy actually became braver and braver, and fought on even after repeated defeats. Even though he knew that he was no match for his opponent, his extremely tenacious fighting spirit and will moved everyone. No wonder this little one can improve so quickly, it's not without reason. Both of them had such thoughts at the same time. The heavier the pressure, the better. Blood was still flowing from the corner of Chu Yang's mouth, and he still made such a request. Chapter 2270. Although the sword had already taken shape and revealed the embryonic form of a heaven-shaking divine sword, the newly formed sword had yet to be quenched. It still needed to be tempered. Impurities still needed to be removed. It still needed to be sharpened. Only then could it truly become a world-shaking peerless divine weapon. And at this stage, every bit of impurities needed to be removed. It needed to be extremely painful to squeeze out the last bit of space before the impurities could be discharged from the body. And in this process, Book Maniac and the Painting King played the role of two big hammers. With the force of a thunderbolt, they came down and squeezed out the last impurities on the embryonic form of Chu Yang's divine sword. They completed the last step of the tempering process. Every battle was a tempering process. Chu Yang almost died every time, hovering between life and death. He could even feel that some secret things that restricted him were slowly flowing out from his body. And this process was infinitely slow. It was also infinitely painful. But this painful process had to be endured. And even if there was no such pain, he had to deliberately seek it out. Otherwise it would be impossible to improve. At night, when Chu Yang was carried back again, he had already fallen into a state of unconsciousness. On his body, one could practically not find a piece of good flesh anymore. Everywhere was bruised, and these were only visible external injuries. The internal injuries in his skin and internal organs had not been taken into account yet. Mo Qingwu and Zi Sheqing sat by the bed and looked at the unconscious Chu Yang. They were concerned and heartbroken, but they were speechless for a moment. Although they knew that Chu Yang's current state was only that of exhaustion and that once he woke up, he would be able to recover quickly and these injuries would only take a very short time to heal, they still couldn't help but feel sad when they saw their sweetheart in such a miserable state. A saint-level expert. Who had ever seen a saint-level expert being so tired? He was actually in such a miserable state. He's too tired? Mo Qingwu's eyes reddened. Sigh. Zi Sheqing let out a long sigh. This is something that can't be helped. The external and internal pressures are pushing him to become stronger as soon as possible. Now that he's suffering, he may be able to avoid many regrets in the future. Zi Sheqing was dressed in a snow-white robe and white dress. She walked slowly to the window and looked at the bright moon in the sky. She felt a surge of emotions and murmured, "In this world there's nothing that can be achieved quickly. Even if there is, it's only through the accumulation of years of pain in the process of achieving it quickly. Only then can it be considered a real achievement. Chu Yang is like this now. His progress is simply too fast." Zi Sheqing sighed. Chu Yang's advancement is different from Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing, Yu Mi, Bu Tian and Chen Qian. As long as you are a human, you must have someone to rely on in your heart. Even if you don't admit it, even if you don't use it, you still have it. Even though Yao Ningning, who relied on external help to become a powerhouse, may be frivolous, but he still has that support. He has his mother. Therefore, even if he achieved it quickly, it's also because his mother thought of ways to improve him and make him. And as long as she thought of a way, the problem of his foundation would naturally be solved for him. As for Tan Tan and Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing, these brothers, although on the surface seem no different from Chu Yang, in reality they are very different. Because they also have someone to rely on. And their reliance is their boss, Chu Yang. Although the brothers are of equal status and there's no difference in terms of spirit and psychology, Chu Yang has long become the spiritual pillar of these people. This is the so-called reliance. Qinggu, Yu Mi, Bu Tian and Chen Qian, although the four of us seem to have different personalities, it's undeniable that Chu Yang is also our spiritual pillar. Can you deny it? Zi Sheqing turned her head and looked at Mo Qinggu. She said softly, "Maybe you don't feel anything usually, but let me ask you, Qinggu, if one day Chu Yang dies, when you're the only one left in this world, will you still have any interest in living? Will you be able to live alone?" Mo Qingwu was shocked. She muttered, "If Chu Yang dies, what's the point of me living? Naturally, we'll go to the underworld together." That's right. So, Chu Yang is your reliance, the reliance of your heart and your life. Similarly, he's also our reliance. Zi Sheqing said with certainty, "So, we all have our reliance. But Chu Yang doesn't have such reliance. He can't rely on anyone else. Because he himself is our reliance. So, he can't rely on anyone else, he can only rely on himself. He has to constantly rely on himself to fight for a limitless future. It's all that he's worked for that we'll rely on. When others cause trouble, there's someone to stand up for them. When we cause trouble, there's Chu Yang to stand up for us. But when Chu Yang causes trouble, he can only bear it himself. This is the difference. The fundamental nature is different. At this stage, Chu Yang seems to have great strength, but in fact, his foundation is not stable. He can only use this kind of extremely high-pressure method to suppress himself. He can use this method to make up for everything that he neglected because of his rapid growth. Only then can he really stabilize and reach the level that he should have now. Zi Sheqing said softly, only when he reaches it himself, when we break through, he will then have a way to go one step further and reduce the pain that we have to endure to the minimum. He will use his cultivation that has long surpassed ours to help us get through the difficulties safely and stabilize our level. Mo Qingwu's eyes were filled with tears. She said with heartache, but this? Chu Yang is too bitter. My heart really aches. From nothing to become an eternal legend. From nothing to establish a foundation that will last for thousands of years. And he's not inferior to anyone in this world. From a barren land to establish an eternal reputation. How can it be so easy? Zi Sheqing sighed deeply. Maybe it's just the most insignificant aspect of his legend. The most painful thing isn't this but sacrifice. The greater the pain that Chu Yang is enduring now, the lesser the sacrifices that we will have to face in the future. And this point, among all of us, other than Chu Yang, no one else can do it. Although your second brother, Mo Tianji, can control the world, devise strategies and take every conceivable possibility into account, but he can't replace Chu Yang's position as a pillar of support. Mo Qingwu nodded as if she understood. She said, but, if we still do this, won't it be too difficult for him? Zi Sheqing smiled slightly. What's too difficult for him? You mean, the jealousy between us? Mo Qingwu's jade-like face blushed. She said, yes, shouldn't we let him relax for a while? There's nothing so easy. Remember, there's nothing difficult about this. Zi Sheqing snorted and said, since he has the guts to provoke so many women, he must pay a corresponding price. Besides, this is just the beginning. If any concubine doesn't go through such adjustment, it will only lead to chaos in the family. At best, it can only be harmonious on the surface, but there will still be countless disputes inside. Including the issue of future heirs. Who is the boss? Who is the boss? Among Chu Yang's children, who is the legitimate son? Who is the concubine? Who has the highest right of inheritance in the future? Who has the absolute authority? These things may be the subject of disputes in the future. They all have to be considered in detail. And the jealousy now is to form a convention after a period of time. Between women we will decide among ourselves. In the future there won't be any more disputes. Otherwise, if everyone has children in the future or if we are Chu Yang's women, it doesn't matter. We don't mind having the same husband because this is the world. But as a mother who will be willing to let her child be inferior to others, there will be a lot of troublesome matters in the future. How can we not decide as soon as possible? So, everything is decided in the beginning. This is the best way. Zi Sheqing's eyes flashed with a calm light. There will be endless disputes. And the initial foundation will start from the jealousy between the few of us during this period of time. No one will give in. So, it will depend on who has the most power in the future. Zi Sheqing smiled and said, between us sisters it's a little heartless to say such things. But rather than saying it out in advance, it's better than us sisters killing each other in the future. This is not cold-heartedness but wisdom. In the future, even if we can control our children, can we control our grandchildren? Even if we can control them all the time, there will be a generation that we can't control in the future. Or maybe we are already tired of all these and don't want to care about them anymore. This is not a possibility but a certainty. What Chu Yang is going to do now and in the future is something that will shock the world. We also have to plan for an indestructible foundation. Everything starts from here, from this moment. Qingwu, these things, not only me, all of you are actually thinking about it. It's just that few of you think about it as clearly as I do. That's all. Mo Qingwu nodded as if she understood. After a while, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Besides, Chu Yang's foundation is not stable yet. It's definitely not the time to indulge in women. Chapter 2271. If we don't endure the pain now, the good days in the future will be delayed. If it's too late, it will be many times better or we may never have it. So, not only Chu Yang has to endure, we have to endure too. Not only Chu Yang, we have to practice too. Zi Sheqing said softly but firmly, a woman's primordial yin, especially one with high cultivation like you and me, is extremely useful for someone like Chu Yang's cultivation. And the higher our cultivation, the greater the benefits we will get when we practice yin-yang dual cultivation. Chanshan and Butian have already lost this opportunity, so we have to cherish it even more. Because what they have lost in advance, the two of us will have to make up for it through Chu Yang in the future. When it came to this topic, even though Zi Sheqing had taken the initiative to bring it up and had also cultivated for many years, the content contained within was actually close to nothing. After all, Zi Sheqing was still a virgin. As she spoke, her face flushed red with embarrassment. Mo Qingwu's pretty face was red all the way to her neck. She lowered her head timidly, but her little ears perked up, listening to every word, afraid that she would miss out on something. Zi Sheqing blushed as she looked at Mo Qingwu. She said word by word seriously, so, Qingwu, you must not give yourself away so easily. No matter how desperate Chu Yang is, you must still hold on to the last hurdle at this stage. You must hold on to this point. If necessary, you can imitate my method. Chu Yang can't do anything about my 10,000 uses all things. Mo Qingwu's face was red and she nodded slightly. However, the determination in his heart was boundlessly strong. So, this matter still has so many uses. I will definitely pay attention. Oh my God, big sister Z? Chu Yang, who had been unconscious on the bed, suddenly let out a painful moan. You are cutting off my way of life. It's fine if you don't let me touch you, but you actually let Qingwu do the same, and want me to imitate your method. I will remember you forever. It turned out that this fellow had long woken up, and had been pretending to be unconscious, to gain sympathy from the two women's conversation. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer. The past few days were already unbearable. Now, with just one sentence from Zi Sheqing, his blissful sexual life had been extended indefinitely. Minister Chu cried on the spot. Seriously, no one tormented him like this. Although what you said makes sense. What? Am I not making sense? Don't you understand? Remember me for a generation? I'm so scared. But I'm afraid that your memory is not deep enough. Do you want me to help you remember it better? Zi Sheqing asked fiercely. That makes sense. Isn't it enough that you make sense? Chu Yang raised his hand weakly. But what? Mo Qingwu asked with a red face. Even if the two of you don't let me touch you. But, those two. Chu Yang's eyes were filled with grief as he said, Butian and Chen, can I? We won't let you touch it either. We have to follow in Big Sister Z's footsteps. Tai Budian and Wu Chen walked in with their faces flushed red and their eyes scrunched up. Chu Yang covered his face. Don't be so heartless. I also have the right to enjoy a blissful sexual life. And so, a bunch of soft punches were thrown at him. It was as if Chu Yang had gone through half a year of hell-like arduous training. His ability to resist attacks had finally made great progress before the departure of the two great experts, Crazed Book and Painting King. At least, when facing Crazy Book alone, Chu Yang could now attack and defend at the same time. Although he could not avoid defeat in the end, but, at least he was no longer completely powerless to fight back. Of course, this was only limited to the scope of sparring. If it was a real life and death battle, Chu Yang would still inevitably be defeated and killed within a dozen or even a few moves. But at the very least, Chu Yang's own foundation had been completely solidified under the continuous tempering of his body day and night during this period of time. Even if he immediately improved his own state again, there would be no worries. On the night before he left, Xu Kuang had said such a sentence. I've never seen a person in this world who has such a crazy drive to practice martial arts. If there is an absolute king in the heavenly imperial court in the future, as long as Chu Yang is not dead by then, I believe that that person will definitely be him. Qiu Yuanshan, the painting king, deeply agreed with this sentence and had no objection at all. The two of them, who were at the peak of the senior level, had accompanied Chu Yang to practice martial arts for half a year, and they actually felt exhausted every day. It was imaginable what level Chu Yang had reached now. How old was Chu Yang now? And how long had the two of them been practicing martial arts? How much room for improvement did Chu Yang have? This was something that was hard to predict, hard to estimate and hard to predict, but it was also something that everyone was optimistic about. Seniors, please take care of yourselves when you go back this time. Chu Yang specially set up a table for the two of them to leave and raised his glass to wish them well. Don't worry if things really turn out like that, even if I have to risk my life, I will help Crazy Book get justice. Qiu Yuanshan looked solemn. Naturally, Crazy Book's matter couldn't be hidden from him. The two of them had a deep friendship of 1,000,000 years and there was no each other, anymore? As early as the first day when the Painting King came to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion to treat his injuries, Crazy Book had already told him about this matter and Chu Yang's guess. At that time the Painting King almost collapsed. If things really can't be done, don't force it, don't be impulsive, there will always be opportunities. With so many good brothers and such powerful forces, this justice will be done sooner or later. Chu Yang said with sincerity, I'm not saying this because I'm a petty person. If such a thing really happens, I hope that the two of you can come back to me as soon as possible. I need you here, and the extraterritorial Heavenly Devil battlefield also needs you. Sacrificing yourself in vain is not what a hero should do. Impulsiveness is useless. Crazy Book and the Painting King sighed deeply. Of course, if there really isn't such a thing, everything is my wrong guess, Chu Yang said solemnly. Please forgive Chu Yang for being presumptuous. The two of them hurriedly got up and said there was no need. Although Chu Yang said so, how could the two of them not know who was real and who was fake with the experience they had accumulated over 1,000,000 years? If they didn't have this ability to judge, then they would have lived in vain. The two of them drank until they were dead drunk at this farewell banquet and left while drunk. Before they left, they wanted to say something but stopped. Chu Yang and Yi King accompanied them and no one said anything. When they came there were 3 of them, but on the way back there were only 2 of them. There was also a guard and they didn't know where he was. The 2 of them wanted to ask about the whereabouts of their brother, but when the words reached their mouths they couldn't ask. Everyone knew that there was no news until now, and they must have died in the hands of the 5 great guards of the Demon Emperor Heaven. The 5 great guards of the Demon Emperor Heaven attacked at the same time, and now there was only Yi King here. What did this mean? What did this mean? Where did the other 4 go? The 3 of them combined their strength, but they still ended up in such a miserable state. That day, only he was left to face the 4 great experts of the Demon Emperor Heaven, and it was on the other side's home ground. How could he have survived? But at this moment what could they do? Could they still turn against each other and become enemies? So the 2 of them didn't talk nonsense and left directly. Even if they felt heartache, they would only show it after they left. The current atmosphere was really not suitable for them to show any abnormalities. Looking at the backs of the 2 people gradually walking away, Chu Yang sighed deeply and said, I'm afraid they won't leave directly. Yes, no matter how slim the chances are, they still have to look for traces of their brother. Even if it's just a wisp of his aura. Yi King sighed. In 1,000,000 years, only one of the 7-star guards fell in this half a year. Chu Yang nodded heavily. If they go back this time. Chu Yang's eyes were filled with worry. I don't know if what happened back then was really what Yuan Tianji said. Yi King sighed deeply. Then at most, one of the 2 can come back as a half-dead person. It's already very good. Chu Yang's heart ached and he said, I hope they can bear with it for a while. If they don't try to be brave. Beside him, everyone slowly shook their heads. Such a breath, as long as it was a Jianghu person, they would definitely not bear with it. Minister, the latest news from Moyun Sky, the battle between Chief Xia of Moyun Sky Pavilion and the army of Moyun Sky Pavilion is currently at a disadvantage. The situation is not optimistic. The person from the Tianji Intelligence Department rushed over to report and gave the above information. During this period of time, under Chu Yang's careful planning and Mo Tianji's careful guidance, the Tianji Intelligence Department quietly entered Moyun Sky realm. Moreover, they quickly got in touch with Xia Danqiong. However, a large-scale battle between large groups of people was ultimately different from a Jianghu pursuit. The importance of intelligence was enough to affect the overall situation. However, it was far from enough to affect the outcome of this battle. After all, Xia Danqiong's combat strength was too weak. The disparity between the true strength of the 2 sides was too great. Even the most accurate intelligence could only be used to predict some tactical evasions in advance. It was difficult to have a decisive impact on the outcome of the battle. With the help of accurate information, it was indeed possible to carry out some small-scale ambushes in certain specific areas and achieve certain results. However, this was already the limit. Other than that, there wasn't much use. It was still the same sentence. The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. In front of absolute strength, even if there were some specific external factors, it was still unable to affect the direction of the battle. Chapter 2272. Chu Yang frowned. Continue to increase the surveillance of intelligence. Don't expose yourself. He had to give Xia Danqiong the greatest assistance he could in this regard. Don't allow any accidents to happen. Try to prolong the battle as long as possible and wait for a variable to appear. Yes. The face of the person in charge of the Tianji intelligence department turned bitter. It wasn't for himself. At best he was just passing on a message. But he was mourning for Mo Yuntian's colleagues. This request was too tough. Don't expose yourself and give the greatest support. Don't allow any accidents to happen. Try to prolong the battle as long as possible. That was fine. But there was still a wait for a variable to appear. This kind of thing, even if a deity were to do it, it would be very difficult. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. No one knew if they would have the chance to see the sunrise of the second day. Under such circumstances, what variable could there be? Brother over there, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble this time. It's probably the legendary, unbearable weight. Now, every piece of information gathered by the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department was sent to Mo Tianji as usual. Chu Yang also received a copy of it. But Chu Yang didn't deal with this intelligence. He didn't even look at it. The ones who really dealt with this intelligence and made use of it were Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian. It had to be said that the coordination between these two women was truly flawless. Tai Butian's degree of control over the overall situation and Wu Qianqian's precise grasp of the specific implementation of the plan were not inferior to Mo Tianji's in terms of precision and meticulousness in the coordination between these two women. If there was a gap, then the only thing that was lacking was that Mo Tianji could use the method of seeing through heaven's secrets to predict good or bad luck. The two women didn't have this ability. This was a limitation of their own abilities. It wasn't a fault of human strength or a fault of war. But because of this, Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian were even more careful. Everything was based on reality. In this way it would be even more feasible. During this period of time, Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion gradually became more meticulous in the division of labor. Every small team had their own tasks and they were strictly assigned to each other. There was not the slightest bit of disorder in the division of labor. Every team member had the advantage of having a tacit understanding with each other. Then, between small teams, between teams, and between large groups, they began to spar and practice their tactics. They began the final run-in before the decisive battle. Those who were not chosen to join the Heavenly Armament Pavilion and whose cultivation base was slightly weaker were secretly recruited into the Tianji Intelligence Department. After being trained by Chu Yang, these people were spread out like a big net to catch fish. Among the Tribulation Brothers, Xie Danxiong was in the most difficult situation. Tan Tan had once lamented one day, "You say Xie Danxiong is living like a bird now? Even GMO and Luo Kadi, those two idiots, are living more comfortably than him. This guy is leading millions of people and living like a stray dog every day." Everyone was speechless. So, how could he be compared with Xie Danxiong's rebellion with millions of people? How could he lead a few hundred or a few thousand people? They were definitely not on the same level. There was no comparison at all. Are we going to make a move now? Tai Butian looked at the information sent back by Mo Yuntian and asked with a frown. The information said very clearly that Xie Danxiong's side was almost at the end of the road. Although they were still fighting now, they were probably not far from being completely annihilated. Chu Yang pondered, "For the time being, let's wait and see if there will be any changes. If Xie Danxiong walks this path himself, it will naturally be the best. If it really can't be done, it won't be too late for us to make a move then." Early on, when they contacted each other, Chu Yang had secretly sent Lightning Snake and the others to lead 20,000 elites to infiltrate the Ink Cloud Sky territory. Once Xie Danxiong's side was really in danger of being annihilated, these two people would immediately make a move to save him. With the strength of these people, it was definitely impossible to turn the whole situation around. But to save the situation for a while, they were quite confident. At the very least, they could ensure that the important people's lives would not be killed. But Chu Yang still hoped that Xie Danxiong could rely on his own ability to get through this crisis. This way there would not be any unnecessary inner demons. Breaking through on one's own and being helped by others were two completely different concepts. If Xie Danxiong could break the deadlock on his own and turn the situation around, then in the future, on the Heavenly Devil battlefield, there would be another invincible and confident Supreme Commander. On the other hand, even if Xie Danxiong was eventually rescued and safely evacuated from the Ink Cloud Sky territory, he might not be able to achieve much in the future. Although this reality was cruel, it had to be faced. For this goal, Chu Yang felt that the risk now was still worth it. Mo Tianji also had the same thoughts as Chu Yang. Now, Mo Tianji's gaze was also all on the Ink Cloud Sky territory. Other than that, there was another extremely exciting thing. That was, Chu Yang's brothers had all been contacted. Although everyone was scattered in their own heavens and earth, in the face of news of their brothers in their respective heavens and earth, they were all filled with excitement. At the very least, it was not like before where they felt like they were fighting alone. As for the other matter, it was quite surprising. Li Xiong too, another fellow countryman who had ascended to the Heaven Imperial City from the Heaven Continent, had not shown his talents for a long time. However, on that day he suddenly appeared out of nowhere and shocked the world with his saber strike. This guy had killed a member of the super big sect, the Heaven Sword Alliance. Moreover, the person he killed was an important person. Now, the Heavenly Sword Alliance had announced to the outside world that they would hunt down Li Xiong Tu at all costs. The momentum was so great that it was only slightly inferior to the time when Chu Yang was jointly hunted down by the three big sections. Mo Chenji acutely felt that this might be a great opportunity for Li Xiong Tu to transform. After hesitating for a while, he finally decided to help. If Li Xiong Tu's news was surprising, then there was another person's news that made people feel shocked. Some time ago, the Heavenly Sword and the Absolute Heaven Sword had appeared at the same time. The Heavenly Sword had been kept by Gu Duxing, and he had mastered it. And the Absolute Heaven Sword, which had been missing for a long time, had finally revealed its owner's true identity. The Absolute Heaven Sword, which was on par with the Heavenly Sword, naturally caused a commotion. And this lucky person who had obtained the Absolute Heaven Sword was also a fellow countryman who had ascended from the Heavenly Layer Continent to the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court. And he was someone that everyone was familiar with. Therefore, coincidences were really scary. Buluqing. This influential person of the Heavenly Layer Continent had been missing ever since he had ascended to the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court. No one knew what his situation was like and what his current cultivation level was like. No one had expected that the first time they heard news about him, it would be such shocking news. Buluqing's killing intent was much stronger than Gu Duxing's. Faced with the encirclement from all sides, he directly killed all of them without mercy. His killing intent was so strong that it was shocking. But as the news about Buluqing spread, the attraction of the Absolute Heaven Sword was still irresistible. Therefore, Buluqing's situation gradually became worse. That Gu Duxing was originally only a heavenly man. But after obtaining the Heavenly Sword technique, he rushed to the saint level in a very short time. He became one of the few experts in the entire Heavenly Layer Imperial Court. Then, how can the legendary Absolute Heaven Sword technique, which is on the same level as the Heavenly Sword technique, be weak? If he obtains the Absolute Heaven Sword technique as long as he successfully cultivates it, won't he become another Gu Duxing? And this Buluqing's cultivation level is much weaker than Gu Duxing's. We can't do anything to Gu Duxing, but can't we do anything to this Buluqing? This is another chance given to us by the heavens. With such a mentality and such words, the commotion caused by Buluqing this time, it even exceeded the one caused by Gu Duxing. If there were people with discerning eyes who carefully analyzed the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court during this period of time, they would definitely be shocked to discover a fact. Starting from 2 years ago, the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court gradually entered a chaotic situation, or rather, a chaotic era. First, Chu Yang attacked aggressively and killed Yuan Tianjie, triggering a long pursuit. Although this pursuit had to stop midway due to the outbreak of Mo Yunqian's rebellion, the importance of this pursuit, the number of people involved, the scope of the pursuit, and the distance of the pursuit, were all the closest to the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court in hundreds of thousands of years. The pursuit on Chu Yang's side had just ended, but Gu Duxing's side had already begun to rise. Gu Duxing's side had not ended, but Rui Badong and Ao Shiyun followed closely behind. Then it was GMO Luo Kadi and the others. Before the matter here had ended, Mo Yuntian had an unprecedented rebellion, and the entire Missouri Yuntian Heavenly Court was in a mess. Before everyone could retract their gazes from Mo Yuntian, they discovered that the Absolute Heaven Sword technique incident had erupted again. And during this process, Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion rose out of nowhere, established itself in Demon Emperor Heaven, and gradually grew stronger and stronger. On the other hand, Tianji Intelligence Department also gradually developed into the #1 intelligence department in the entire Heavenly Layer Imperial Court during this period of time. They had complete control over the world. And in the other few heavens and earth, Gu Duxing's Heavenly Armament Pavilion rose strongly with the end of Gu Duxing's pursuit. Rui Badong, Ao Shiyun and the others who were being pursued, each had a superpower and gradually grew. These new powers gradually became the source of contention for the world's power. In the millions of years of the Heavenly Layer Imperial Court, there was no lack of some powers that suddenly rose and became popular for a period of time. It could be said that there were talents in every generation, and each led the world for thousands of years. But such a special phenomenon like mushrooms after a rain like now was really the first time in millions of years. Especially when, at such a juncture, the heavenly demon calamity that had not occurred for a long time suddenly erupted in the entire heavenly layer imperial court. Everything was mixed together, and the whole world gave people a strange feeling as if it had directly become a pot of porridge. When all these things exploded at the same time, it gave people an indescribable feeling of subtlety. It seemed like the world was really about to change. Chapter 2273. Demon Emperor Heaven, Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Chu Yang, Zi Xiecheng, Mo Qingwu, Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan sat cross-legged together. Chu Yang was in the middle. Mo Qingwu's hand was holding Chu Yang's left hand, while Zi Xiecheng was holding Chu Yang's right hand. The other hand of the two girls was connected to Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan respectively. Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan's empty hand was pressed on Chu Yang's back. The five of them formed a perfect cycle, sharing all of their essence energy. At least at this moment, there was no difference in cultivation between them. Chu Yang, what are you planning to do by designing such an essence energy sharing formation? Zi Xiecheng was a little confused. Is there something good? Or is it something that requires 5 saints to share at the same time? After activating the sharing formation, the cultivation of the 5 people gradually became the same level after a period of adjustment. As long as the formation was not removed, it would always be maintained in this state. And this state was an absolutely fair state of sharing, and such reality would require at least 2 saints to preside over it in order to be able to display it. And here it was Chu Yang, Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng, 3 saints who were in charge of it together. Such a lineup had obviously exceeded the basic requirements of this formation. But why was it so serious? Under the sharing formation, Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan, whose cultivation was originally relatively lower, also had their cultivation temporarily increased. From the original level of saints, they directly jumped to the level of saints. Although this was only a temporary increase, Chu Yang wanted to use this special situation to help the 2 girls directly undergo a transformation that would allow them to reach the heavens in one step. However, this transformation required the selfless efforts of Chu Yang and Mo Qingwu, and Zi Xiecheng as well as the power of the formation. Then there were other special means to complete it. I have a very special heavenly treasure with me. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for one person to use it rashly. If one is not careful, it may spoil things. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, if I find someone else for such a thing, I'm afraid that the participant will be selfish. If there's even a little bit of distraction, it may cause irreparable losses. I've thought about it several times, and it seems that only our family can have no scruples. Scruples? What scruples? All the women widened their eyes and voiced their doubts in unison. Actually, during this process, it is unavoidable that the yuan qi of heaven and earth will surge to the extreme. Under such circumstances, the clothes on the body will naturally turn to dust. If it is a family member, of course it is fine. But if there are outsiders, it will be too embarrassing. Chu Yang smiled mischievously. No matter how one looked at his smile, it was as if he was asking for a beating. The 4 women blushed at the same time. They secretly thought that this sentence made some sense. Especially the bodies of women, how could they casually let others see it? Even the people closest to them would feel embarrassed, let alone an outsider. Under such circumstances, it was still safer to rely on his own family. 4 pairs of eyes focused on Chu Yang's face at the same time. The 4 girls thought in their hearts, actually it's a bit inappropriate to have this guy here. If this guy's hooligan nature flares up, then wouldn't he? If that were to happen, things would be far from good. Just as they were thinking endlessly, they suddenly felt the yuan qi of heaven and earth in their palms start to flow faster. Chu Yang had already started to activate the sharing formation. It was too late to withdraw now. The consequences of rashly withdrawing would be far from good. All the women were annoyed. This guy, he's obviously taking the opportunity to take advantage of us. But at this moment, we can only let him take advantage of us. Letting him see but not touch us is even more of a punishment. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Moreover, Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng's cultivations had already reached such a level. They could also understand that Chu Yang was thinking of ways to help Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan raise their cultivations. Such things naturally couldn't be said openly. Otherwise, both Tai Budian and Wu Chanshan would feel embarrassed. So Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng naturally wouldn't say it out loud. In the future, everyone will be a family. What's there to take advantage of? After the circulation of energy, Chu Yang's mind suddenly moved. A strange black fruit appeared in front of everyone. This fruit did not emit any smell and it was spinning rapidly in the air. Apart from the fact that the fruit was black in color and looked quite unusual, there was nothing else that was out of the ordinary. This fruit is called the Netherworld fruit. Don't underestimate it. Its effects are probably far above the heaven and earth mystery yellow fruit that we ate previously. This fruit blossoms once every 10,000 years, bears fruit once every 10,000 years, and ripens after another 10,000 years. Not to mention how long it takes for the tree to grow, just the fruit alone takes 30,000 years to ripen from blooming to ripening. Chu Yang's low voice sounded. The four women felt their hearts tremble from the bottom of their hearts. It would take at least 30,000 years to grow into a fruit like this. The rarity of this nether hell fruit could be imagined. Just as they were thinking, they saw Chu Yang open his mouth. That netherworld fruit flew toward his mouth rapidly as if it had grown eyes. The next moment, the four women felt their hearts tremble. It was difficult for them to calm down. It was as if something in their hearts had suddenly exploded. It was as if the universe had suddenly exploded, giving birth to a sky full of stars. And from Chu Yang's mouth, a thick black gas that they had never seen before suddenly bloomed with beautiful colors like a rainbow. But when they looked closely, it was clearly still black. There was no difference in color. Chu Yang closed his mouth tightly. The muscles on his face twitched inexplicably, and an urge to curse surged in his heart. This is a fruit? It's really funny. There's actually such a smelly, sour, bitter, spicy, and tasteless fruit? The moment the netherworld fruit suddenly melted in his mouth, Chu Yang had an impulse that was worse than death. No wonder it was called the netherworld fruit. People who ate this fruit would feel as if they had taken a stroll in hell. Just this taste alone was enough to make people die 7 or 8 times. But this taste then turned into all kinds of feelings, slowly entering the stomach, body, and meridians. Then, it turned into a powerful tsunami-like force that rushed up fiercely. Chu Yang bore the brunt of it. He only felt a sudden shock in his head, and then blood spurted out of his 7 orifices. Even with Chu Yang's current Saint cultivation and the strong foundation of the heaven-splitting divine technique, he still couldn't withstand the impact of such a huge amount of medicinal power. At this moment, Chu Yang only felt that his internal organs were burning. The only thing he could do was to desperately operate his own cultivation and disperse the spiritual energy that had already condensed in his meridians toward Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng. If he didn't disperse it quickly, the only result would be his body exploding and he would die. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, this smell and this feeling are only on me. If it were on Qingwu and the rest, how would they be able to withstand it? If it was just a strong impact of spiritual energy, it would be fine. Although it was indeed powerful beyond imagination, after the spiritual energy sharing array, it would not reach the point where the 5 saints couldn't take it. But this special smell, it really made people feel like they were better off dead. Chu Yang had never thought that a mere smell could be so unbearable. He was hovering between life and death. His life was worse than death. Even the thought of committing suicide had appeared more than once in his mind. The horror of this smell could be seen at a glance. Even with Chu Yang's perseverance and steadiness, he couldn't help but have such a feeling, not to mention what kind of terrible consequences this smell would cause if it really entered the mouth of a girl. Chu Yang didn't doubt it at all. Not to mention the others, if Mo Qingwu had a taste of this smell, this girl would definitely not care whether this fruit had grown for tens of thousands of years or how much spiritual energy it had. She would directly spit it out without hesitation and then vomit into a mess. As for the other 3 girls, whether it was the steady Tai Budian, the persevering Wu Qianqian, or big sister Zi Xiecheng, who was the most obsessed with improving her strength, the chances of them being able to withstand this smell was definitely not more than 1%. At most 1%. The other girls also had a chance of vomiting into a mess. Under the operation of the array led by Chu Yang, the 4 girls could clearly feel that there was a huge amount of energy that they had never seen before. It was strong and endless, and it was really rushing over like a tsunami. And all the meridians in their bodies actually showed signs of being unable to accommodate it at that moment, and could collapse at any time. The 4 girls couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Guard your heart tightly, clear your mind, go all out and don't slack off. Chu Yang said softly, but in the ears of the 4 girls, it was like a loud bell, enlightening even the apathetic. Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian were shocked at the same time. Mo Qingwu and Zi Xiecheng's cultivation had already reached that level, so naturally they wouldn't lose their minds. The only 2 people who needed to worry now were Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian. The two girls were only able to forcibly improve their cultivation because of the array. Even though their cultivation could be improved immediately, it was very difficult for their state of mind to be compatible with it. And the current situation was like adding 100 pounds to 100 pounds, and it was really very dangerous. Qinggu Xieching, you must release your hearts and mobilize your vital yin. Chuyang continued, fill your meridians, guide your spiritual energy, and succeed in one go. Mo Qinggu and Zi Xieching didn't hesitate and did as they were told. Chapter 2274. The elemental energy sharing formation was a special technique that used external forces to increase one's cultivation. However, if there was no extremely strong external force, the increase would still be relatively limited. Chu Yang, on the other hand, had taken the netherworld fruit at such a special time. It could complement each other. The tyrannical power of this hell fruit was to completely equalize the spiritual energy in everyone's body. Then they could talk about further improvement. And this improvement was referring to the improvement of Chu Yang, Mo Qinggu and Zi Xieching. As for Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian, although they would not improve their main force, they could still retain the saint realm that they had during the elemental energy sharing array and become true saints of their generation. As for what they could improve in the future, that was a matter for the future. However, for Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian, such a realm was undoubtedly still a step to the sky. In fact, it was not an exaggeration to say that such an amazing improvement was rare. Since ancient times, if not for extremely special reasons, very few people would be willing to sacrifice their own strength for the improvement of others. But this time, Chu Yang did so without any hesitation. And he had obtained Mo Qinggu and Zi Xieching's consent in advance. Although the spiritual power from the infernal fruit was enormous to the extreme, the five of them were working together to absorb it, and they were gradually getting on the right track. And Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian also reacted at this moment. How was this an ordinary cultivation? Chu Yang, Qing Wu, and Xie Qing were obviously using such a special method to help the two of them. While feeling grateful, they also sighed. The two women were not the kind of indecisive people. They quickly made a decision in their hearts. Since Chu Yang wanted to do this, one of the reasons was naturally to improve everyone's overall strength. The second reason was because of the small family relationship and the problems of getting along with each other in the future. If they were unreasonable, then Chu Yang's good intentions would be wasted. Just as Chu Yang thought. Chu Yang's road to love had always been very persistent. Or it could be said that if Tai Budian had not sacrificed herself to save him, Chu Yang would only be with Mo Qinggu until now. Until now, in terms of love, Mo Qinggu was irreplaceable and unshakable in Chu Yang's heart. However, Chu Yang had always felt somewhat guilty towards Mo Qinggu after he had accepted Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian. Although this world was a place where men were superior to women, and women were inferior to men, and it was very common to have multiple wives and concubines. However, in his previous life, Chu Yang had always only had Qing Wu. Therefore, Chu Yang also felt a little sentimental. As for the four women, there was a strange phenomenon. Zi Xieching and Mo Qinggu had the highest cultivation, but these two women were unlikely to stay at home for long periods of time. If there was a war in the future, these two women would have to accompany Chu Yang to charge and break through the enemy lines. However, the cultivation of these two women was certainly high, and their martial arts were certainly strong. But they weren't qualified candidates when it came to living at home. In fact, they were obviously inferior to Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian. As for Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian, their overall ability was rare. However, in terms of cultivation, in a general sense, their current cultivation was already quite commendable. However, in the current situation it was still a big weakness. In the future, if Chu Yang went to war and the two women stayed at the base camp, then the issue of safety would be a huge hidden danger that couldn't be ignored. But now, after doing this, the four of them were able to completely share their power. Thus, the flaws and small conflicts that might have appeared or had already appeared between the four of them, as well as some of their pettiness, were completely wiped out. Because, as long as there was even the slightest bit of distraction, this kind of sharing would definitely not succeed. And once it succeeded, the women would naturally have a very magical telepathy with each other in the future. In this way, it was basically unlikely that there would be any conflicts. This was an important matter that Chu Yang had been preparing for a long time. Today the time was finally ripe. During this period of time, I've been having a very subtle but very real feeling. Chu Yang said slowly, I'm afraid that this kind of peaceful days won't last much longer. The war with the heavenly demons may erupt at any time. Now the spiritual energy output of the hell's fruit had entered a certain trajectory. Chu Yang could divide his attention to deal with the spiritual energy while talking. While he was explaining a matter, he also attracted the attention of the four women so that they wouldn't think too much and get rid of those distracting thoughts that they shouldn't have. Sure enough, as soon as he opened his mouth, everyone's attention was instantly drawn to the topic he was talking about. So, I chose to use this method to increase the strength of Butian and Chen. Chu Yang said heavily, peace in the rear is a major prerequisite for victory in the battle at the front line. The four women were silent at the same time. They nodded one after another, expressing their agreement. Yes. Tai Butian frowned slightly and said, during this period of time, there have been heavenly demon outbreaks appearing in various parts of the Heaven Imperial Court. But in the beginning, although the extent of the scourge was bad, it was still acceptable. But later on, I'm afraid it gradually became a little out of control. At least, it's a situation where the tail is too big to be dealt with. Tai Butian frowned and said, I've analyzed more than 3,400 cases of heavenly demon outbreaks in the recent years. I've surprisingly found that although they were all caused by the heavenly demons, in essence, there were some differences. Or rather, there were some very strange areas. Chu Yang and the other three people listened quietly and no one interrupted. They knew that Tai Butian usually didn't make conclusions easily. But once she came to a conclusion, it was final. Tai Butian's status as an emperor had led to her temperament. She would never open her mouth easily. Once she opened her mouth, it would be earth-shattering. So, Shen and I sorted out all the information about the heavenly demons that the intelligence department had reported. In the end, we came to a conclusion, a very unbelievable conclusion. That is, the heavenly demon outbreaks in the beginning were very likely to be deliberately disguised and created by someone with ulterior motives. And those who were mixed in later on were the real heavenly demon traders. Chu Yang's eyes narrowed and he was moved. He said in surprise, there's actually such a thing? I've thought about this matter several times. The conclusion is the same. There's absolutely no falsehood in it. Tai Butian nodded affirmatively. Then I need information about these people. The intentions of the person who set up this trap are really thought-provoking, Chu Yang said lightly. Although he didn't say it explicitly, Tai Butian knew who Chu Yang was referring to by these people. While everyone was talking, the huge spiritual energy from the Hell's Fruit was also rapidly circulating in their meridians. And Tai Butian and Wu Chen felt it the most clearly. They could clearly feel that their bodies were gradually changing subtly. Or rather, the word subtly was not the right word because the process was very fast. The impurities in their bodies were being expelled in a way that they could feel. And once those impurities were expelled from their bodies, they immediately turned into dust and dissipated. Gradually, the bodies and faces of the five people were surrounded by a kind of sparkling and translucent divine light. Seeing that he was about to succeed, Chu Yang suppressed that indescribable fear. He pinched his nose and took out another Hell's Fruit and swallowed it. He used that kind of martyr feeling and carried a strong sacrifice spirit. It had to be said that experiencing that hellish taste once was already too much. Chu Yang really didn't want to experience it a second time. However, the results before his eyes only improved Tai Butian and Wu Chen, while he, Mo Qingwu and Zi Sheqing didn't get much of an improvement. In fact, because of the equalization of cultivation just now, it even led to a certain degree of decline. Chu Yang didn't want to cause any problems among the girls, so he could only go through the 18 levels of hell again. Finally, this was the second time he experienced it, and he was mentally prepared. It was a little better than the previous time. However, that kind of sick feeling of wanting to send that thing into his mouth, even though he knew it was something else, attacked him wave after wave. It was a different kind of feeling. Slowly, Chu Yang and the others entered a transcendent state where they forgot about themselves. They closed their eyes and wholeheartedly guided the spiritual energy to flow through their meridians. A never-before-seen holy and extremely dense white gas gradually formed on the bodies of the five people, completely enveloping the five of them within it. And just when everyone was in this wonderful state, something even more wonderful and unimaginable happened to the five people. First of all, a small and exquisite seal slowly emerged from Chu Yang's smooth forehead. Although the seal was small, it was filled with an awe-inspiring and inviolable aura of a superior. Or rather, it could be said that it was the aura of an emperor who ruled over the world. It was clearly just an illusory image of a seal, but at this moment, it was filled with a feeling of substance. It gradually emerged on Chu Yang's forehead, and finally separated from it. It no longer floated but just rotated slowly. And on the bodies of the four girls, Mo Qingwu, Zi Sheqing, Tai Butian and Wu Chen, A very special gas also gradually emerged at this moment. Those gases were filled with the aura of nature, gentle and warm, but also gave people an extremely powerful and real feeling. They were the few mysterious gases that the Elven Empress had evolved with all her divine thoughts back then. These auras of different colors gradually emerged, and slowly surrounded the Elven Empress seal that was rotating on Chu Yang's forehead. They were filled with an indescribable feeling of endless longing. Entangling, 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 and all of this was going on quietly without Chu Yang and the others noticing. That illusory image of the Elven Empress seal rotated slowly and elegantly. An unusually huge force of nature broke through the air without warning, and entered the room at an extremely fast speed without making a sound. In a flash, it had already entered the bodies of the 5 people. First thing, tomorrow is the surgery. After tomorrow I will write a chapter a day. I won't be able to write for about 10 days. I don't have many chapters left, so I will try my best to write and update secretly. After the surgery I will upload a photo of my hands on Weibo, lest some people say that I am looking for excuses. Let's have a happy new year and not spend it in suspicion. That's not comfortable. Second thing, there are a total of 5 chapters regarding the cold and arrears. I won't be able to repay them before the Spring Festival. After the Spring Festival, when my hands recover, I will make up for it. An outburst, compensation. Third thing, during the Spring Festival from tomorrow until the 8th, I will probably write a chapter a day. During the few days after the surgery, there may or may not be an update break. In short, I will try my best. Fourth thing, the Spring Festival is not considered arrears, so let me celebrate the Spring Festival. So I will write a chapter a day and will not make up after the holidays. Everyone please forgive me. Chapter 2275. The annual awards finally came to an end. To be honest, before the last moment I was worried about my gains and losses. However, with the support of all my brothers and sisters, we finally got what we wanted. Author of the Year is a great honor, and it was given to me by all of you. I will never forget this moment of glory for the rest of my life. Brothers and sisters, thank you all. At this moment, my heart was filled with mixed feelings. Thousands of words could be summed up into one sentence. I finally have the first place. I am no longer second place forever. Whoever dares to call me second place forever, I will spit at him to death. Although I am not on the monthly votes list, I am really satisfied. Looking back on the battles of the past few years, I really feel a little sad. We have been fighting, but we have never won. Battle with potatoes lost. Battle with tomatoes lost. Battle with Qingdong lost. Battle with blinded eyes lost. Battle with blood red lost. Battle with urchin lost. Battle with moon pass lost. Battle with catfish lost. Along the way we have continued to lose and fight. Some of them did not just lose once or twice. Let's not talk about sad things. Although we have lost so many times, we have not fallen. Is it not so? Thank you to all our opponents who have forged us into an undefeated team. Until today. The martial world is still the martial world. The wind is still the wind. The world is still the world. The wind is still the world. As long as there is wind, I will rule the world. I am very proud. Because I have all of you. I am very proud because I have endured all the failures. I believe that in the future we will enjoy victory one day. Moreover, I will work hard to lead everyone to taste the sweetness of victory again and again. We have lost so many times, but we have not fallen. This is a miracle. Therefore we will welcome our peak in the future. I believe in it. The annual awards have ended. Author of the Year was won by my brothers and sisters. Vice moderators Ben Xin, Big Cat and Tion have been working hard to start the voting. It is hard to imagine how much effort they have put in. All the managers have been watching. Brothers, cast your votes one by one. Every time I see the votes, my heart is always burning. All the leaders, Feng Wu, Yaya, Long Yinue, Immortals, Ling Piaoping and so on. Too many people have contributed selflessly for this Author of the Year. Great help. Thank you all. Sincerely thank you all. After the new year, I will work even harder to repay everyone. Today I'm going to perform the surgery on my hand. Let's talk about the updates during the Spring Festival. From today onwards, one chapter a day will be updated regularly at 5 o'clock in the afternoon until the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. At that time his hand was basically healed. In fact, it should have been healed in the beginning, but for the sake of safety, he took 2 extra days. Chapter 2276. What's wrong? The Soul King who followed closely behind the Heart King frowned. Come. Immediately, he realized that there were only the calligraphy and painting kings in the room. The other four people's hearts skipped a beat. The Heart King, who had a bad feeling, suddenly turned gloomy and irritable, as if the suppression before the storm. Where's the chess master? The calligraphy and painting kings lowered their heads and didn't say a word. Where's the chess master? The other four people shouted together. Their expressions and tone became very anxious and anxious. They knew that it wasn't good, but they still had a sliver of hope. Even if he was seriously injured and waiting for death, they weren't afraid. As long as he was still breathing, it was fine. Don't ask any more. Yuan Tianming let out a long sigh. The chess master was besieged by the 5 great guards of the Demon Emperor Sky. He's already buried in the Demon Emperor Sky. In the secret room, the atmosphere instantly became abnormally quiet and oppressive. Only the sound of the 4 people panting could be heard. Even if the experts at the peak of the Saint Realm didn't breathe for 10 years or 100 years, they wouldn't let out such heavy panting sounds. But now, the panting sounds of the 4 people were like bellows. Dead? The Heart King's voice became dry. He laughed and said, Lord, please don't make such a joke. How could the chess master die just like that? As he spoke, his eyes scanned the faces of the calligraphy and painting kings, full of hope. He hoped that the 2 of them would suddenly change from pretending to be sad to laughing and telling him, "You've been deceived, you fool." That way he definitely wouldn't be angry. He would only happily pounce on them and happily beat them up. Even if they beat him up, it wouldn't matter as long as they said that the chess master wasn't dead. The other brothers were also waiting, eagerly anticipating as they looked at the faces of the calligraphy freak and Qiu Yuanshan. The 2 of them only felt as if their hearts had swallowed tens of thousands of kilograms of Chinese gold thread. Their throats seemed to be blocked, and for a moment they couldn't say a word. They just stood there in a daze like statues. Their Adam's apple moved a few times, but they only swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The eyes of the other 4 gradually turned from hopeful to lifeless, powerless and desperate. Dead? The Heart King said blankly, Really dead? The Go Master really died? Is my brother really dead? Suddenly he looked up to the sky and roared, You 2 bastards, hurry up and tell me that this is a joke. What a joke. Suddenly he flew forward and grabbed the lapels of Crazy Book and Painting King. He shouted angrily, Speak quickly. Say it's a joke quickly. There was a burst of crazy shaking. Crazed Book and Painting King's bodies were shaking rapidly like sifting chaff, but they looked at Heart King with despair and sadness in their eyes and did not resist at all. Finally the Heart King stopped shaking. He looked at the 2 of them with a sharp gaze, and instantly realized that the 2 of them had been seriously injured before. He slowly took 2 steps back and stood side by side with the other 3 people. Suddenly he chuckled and said, We have all lived for millions of years. If we should die, we should have died long ago. Life and death, everyone has already seen past it. It's nothing. Who can truly not die? When he said this, he seemed to be comforting himself but also comforting the others. However, his voice was worse than crying. His face was worse than crying. His chest rose and fell more and more violently, and he finally couldn't help but roar, But I want to know who killed them? How did they die? What's the whole story? The others also stared at the 2 of them. They didn't say a word and even stopped breathing. In an instant, the entire secret room was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. The gaze on Yuan Tianji's thin and dignified face suddenly flickered, as if he wanted to say something but he didn't. He was just sizing up the Crazed Book and the Painting King with a strange look in his eyes without leaving a trace. As they spoke, Yuan Tian's limitless eyes' indescribable expression became more and more serene. It was bottomless. After listening to the 2 kings, the Heart King roared with grief and indignation, We will go to Demon Emperor Heaven now. We will take revenge on the Demon Empress. We will go to Demon Emperor Heaven. Revenge. Revenge. The Soul King and the others clamored. Silence. The strange expression on Yuan Tianji's face suddenly disappeared, and he only roared angrily, This matter concerns the war between the 2 worlds and tens of billions of lives. How can you treat it like a child's play? You are all people with high statuses and your life experiences aren't ordinary. How can you be so impulsive? Yuan Tianji's face was full of anger. But how can we do nothing when our brothers are killed? Are we just going to let this matter go? Impossible. Heart King's face was full of anger and he tried his best to suppress his voice, but it became more and more feminine, so feminine that it was horrifying. If there was someone with a lower cultivation present, just this voice of his would be able to cause internal injuries. How can I not be heartbroken? I'm heartbroken too. But, the internal strife on our side hasn't subsided yet. If we rashly start a war, victory or defeat is secondary. I'm afraid there won't be a chance for the chess master to take revenge in the future. Yuan Tianjie sighed. So we can only endure for now. When the internal strife is over, I will naturally conquer the heavens. Yuan Tianjie said heavily, 10 years isn't too late to take revenge. This emperor will definitely seek justice for the chess master in the future. After a moment of silence, Yuan Tianjie said abnormally heavily, the chess master is gone. You all only know that he's your good brother, but have you ever thought that he's also my brother? A brother who has gone through life and death together for millions of years. Heart King, Soul King and the others all fell silent. After a long while, Heart King said heavily, I hope Lord Celestial Emperor remembers what you said today, and don't forget this blood feud. In his grief and indignation, Heart King was even more furious. He didn't even realize that talking to Lord Celestial Emperor like this was already somewhat overstepping his boundaries. But since Lord Celestial Emperor had already said so, it was equivalent to making a guarantee. If Heart King still insisted on going to the Demon Emperor Heaven to take revenge, it would be a little too much, too unreasonable, and unreasonable. Yuan Tianjie nodded deeply, his face solemn. Thank you, Lord Celestial Emperor. The senior guards bowed together. The moment they bowed, a few drops of turbid tears finally fell onto the ground, making a loud and powerful sound. Your Majesty. Bok Kwang took a step forward, wanting to say something but hesitated. Yuan Tianjie's eyes flickered, and he asked evenly, Is there anything else? This mission failed. My brother died. This subordinate really can't absolve himself from the blame. Bok Kwang said sorrowfully, In the end it's all because I'm not strong enough. If it weren't for me. Speaking up to here, his voice choked and he couldn't speak for a moment. The other brothers all sighed and said, How can this matter be blamed on you? Bok Kwang, why do you have to blame yourself so much? Yuan Tianjie thought to himself, so it's because of this? No wonder I felt that something was wrong with Bok Kwang. With his melancholy personality, this kind of attitude is the right thing to do. He suddenly felt relieved and his tone became even gentler as he said softly, Bok King, this matter really can't be blamed on you. Sigh, the weather is unpredictable and people are unpredictable. Life, death, victory and defeat are really normal for us people of the Jianghu. Perhaps, although the chess master died, he risked his life to bring you two brothers back safely. For someone like the chess master who values friendship and righteousness, perhaps he died a worthy death and went to the netherworld with a smile. You don't have to blame yourself too much. The other brothers all agreed and comforted him. If they asked themselves honestly, if they were in the same situation, they might also choose to sacrifice themselves to ensure that their brothers left safely. Thinking of this, their hearts were also filled with emotions. Perhaps, for the chess master, being able to protect Bok Kwang and the Painting King to leave safely in such a dangerous situation, he already had no regrets? Crazy Book took a deep breath and said, Before this subordinate has always had some reservations in my heart for so many years. Even when I assisted His Majesty the Heavenly Emperor in his cultivation, I also rarely went all out. Now, I actually caused my own brother to. Bok Kwang suddenly prostrated himself on the ground and burst into tears. This is really my fault. I shouldn't have hidden my selfishness. The eyes of the brothers turned red again. Yuan Tianjie sighed and took a step forward. He patted Bok Kwang's shoulder gently and said gently, It's okay. We will definitely take revenge for this. Bok Kwang banged his head on the ground and said loudly, This subordinate will definitely do his best to assist your Majesty to achieve great success in his cultivation, subdue the Demon Empress and take revenge for my brothers. Good. Yuan Tianjie was greatly comforted and nodded repeatedly, I believe that the chess master will also smile if he knows that you have such a heart. Your Majesty, this subordinate was seriously injured this time and almost lost his life. However, misfortune is a blessing in disguise. I accidentally comprehended a cultivation method that is more effective than before. Crazy Shu stood up with a determined look on his face. Your Majesty, I can't make a breakthrough just by reading a myriad of books. I lack the feeling of looking directly at the world. The picturesque landscape and the feeling of looking at the world with one glance can't be completely integrated with my body and mind. That's right. Yuan Tianjie had actually been worried about this for many years. When he heard this, his spirit was lifted. What exactly did you think of? Tell me in detail and see if I can give you some suggestions. This matter also needs a special medium to participate, the Painting King. Bok Kwang said solemnly, There is a saying that painting and calligraphy are inseparable. However, for so long we have always neglected this point. Yuan Qinjie fell into deep thought. Books can certainly be all-encompassing and bear all things. However, paintings can be used to view thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in a more direct way. Book Kwang said, if we can add the texture of pictures to the all-encompassing land, then the comprehension will be truly all-encompassing. At least it will be much stronger than before. Yuan Qinjie said, I'm afraid this matter is not that easy. We have tried many methods before, but the results were very little. Chapter 2277. What's wrong? The Soul King who followed closely behind the Heart King frowned. He then realized that there were only the calligraphy and painting kings in the room. The other four people's hearts skipped a beat. The Heart King, who had a bad feeling, suddenly said in a gloomy and irritable voice, as if the suppression before the storm, "Where's the chess master?" The calligraphy and painting kings lowered their heads and didn't say a word. "Where's the chess master?" The other four people shouted together. Their expressions and tone became very anxious and anxious. They knew that it wasn't good, but they still had hope. Even if he was seriously injured and waiting for death, they weren't afraid. As long as he was still breathing, it was fine. Don't ask any more. Yuan Qinjie sighed deeply. The chess master was attacked by the 5 great guards of the Demon Emperor's sky. He's already buried in the Demon Emperor's sky. In the secret room, the atmosphere instantly became abnormally quiet and oppressive. Only the sound of the 4 people panting could be heard. Even if the experts at the peak of the Saint Realm didn't breathe for 10 years or 100 years, they wouldn't let out such heavy panting sounds. But now, the panting sounds of the 4 people were like bellows. Dead? The Heart King's voice became dry. He laughed and said, Hee. Sir, please don't make such a joke. Ah, how could the chess master die just like that? As he said that, his eyes scanned the faces of the calligraphy and painting kings, full of hope. He hoped that the 2 of them would suddenly change from pretending to be sad to laughing and telling him, "You've been deceived, you fool." That way he definitely wouldn't be angry. He would just happily pounce on them and happily grab them to give them a good beating. Even if they beat him up, it wouldn't matter as long as they said that the chess master wasn't dead. The other brothers were also waiting, eagerly looking at the faces of the calligraphy freak and Qiu Yuanshan. The 2 of them only felt as if they had swallowed thousands of kilograms of coptis. Their throats seemed to be blocked. For a moment they couldn't say a word. They just stood there in a daze like statues. Their Adam's apple moved a few times, but they only swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The eyes of the other 4 gradually turned from hope to listlessness, powerlessness and despair. Dead? The Heart King said blankly, really dead? The chess master is really dead? Is my brother really dead? Suddenly he looked up to the sky and roared angrily, "You 2 bastards, quickly tell me that this is a joke." What a joke. Ah. Suddenly he flew forward and grabbed the lapels of Crazy Book and Painting King. He shouted angrily, "Speak quickly. Say it's a joke quickly." There was a burst of crazy shaking. Crazed Book and Painting King's bodies were shaking rapidly like sifting chaff, but they looked at Heart King with despair and sadness in their eyes and did not resist at all. Finally the Heart King stopped shaking. He looked at the 2 of them with sharp eyes, and instantly realized that the 2 of them had been seriously injured before. He slowly took 2 steps back and stood side by side with the other 3 people. Suddenly he chuckled and said, "We have lived for millions of years. Those who should die should have died long ago. Life and death, everyone has already accepted it. It's nothing. Who can truly not die?" He seemed to be comforting himself, but at the same time, it also seemed like he was comforting others. However, his voice was even worse than crying. His face was even uglier than crying. His chest rose and fell more and more violently. Finally he couldn't help but roar, "But I want to know, whose hands did they die in? How did they die? What's the whole story?" The others also stared at the 2 of them one after another. They didn't say a word and even stopped breathing. In an instant the entire secret room was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. On Yuan Qinjie's thin and dignified face, his eyes suddenly flickered as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He was just sizing up the Crazed Book and the Painting King with a strange look in his eyes without a trace. As they spoke, Yuan Tian's limitless eyes' indescribable expression became more and more serene. It was bottomless. After listening to the 2 kings, the Heart King roared with grief and indignation, "We will go to the Demon Emperor Heaven now. We will take revenge on the Demon Empress. We will go to the Demon Emperor Heaven. Revenge. Revenge." The Soul King and the others clamored. Silence. The strange expression on Yuan Tianjia's face suddenly disappeared and was completely hidden. He only roared angrily, "This matter concerns the battle of billions of lives on both sides of the world. How can you treat it like a game? You are all people with high statuses and your life experiences aren't ordinary. How can you be so impulsive?" Yuan Tianjia's face was full of anger. "But how can we do nothing when our brothers are killed? Are we just going to let this matter go? Absolutely impossible." Heart King's face was full of anger. He tried his best to suppress his voice, but it became more and more feminine, so feminine that it was horrifying. If there was someone with a lower cultivation present, just this voice of his would be able to cause internal injuries. "How can I not be heartbroken? I'm heartbroken too. But the internal strife on our side hasn't subsided yet. If we rashly start a war, victory or defeat is secondary. I'm afraid we won't have the chance to take revenge in the future." Yuan Tianjia sighed. "So we can only endure for now. When the internal strife is over, I will naturally send troops to the Demon Emperor Heaven." Yuan Tianjia said heavily, "It's never too late to take revenge. One day I will definitely seek justice for the Chess King." After a moment of silence, Yuan Tianjia said heavily, "The Chess King is gone. You all only know that he's your good brother, but have you ever thought that he's also my brother? A brother who has gone through life and death together for millions of years." Heart King, Soul King and the rest all fell silent. After a long while, Heart King said heavily, "I hope Lord Heavenly Emperor remembers what you said today. Don't forget this blood feud." In his grief and indignation, Heart King was even more furious. He didn't even realize that speaking like this to Lord Heavenly Emperor was already overstepping his boundaries. But since Lord Heavenly Emperor had already said this, it was equivalent to making a guarantee. If Heart King still insisted on going to the Demon Emperor Heaven to take revenge, it would be a little too much. It would be too unreasonable and unreasonable. Yuan Tianjia nodded deeply, his face solemn. "Thank you, Lord Heavenly Emperor." The senior guards bowed together. The moment he bowed, a few drops of turbid tears finally fell to the ground with a loud and clear sound. "Your Majesty." Bok Kwang took a step forward, wanting to say something but hesitated. Yuan Tianjia's eyes flickered, and he asked evenly, "Is there anything else?" "This mission failed. My brother died. I really can't absolve myself from the blame." Bok Kwang said painfully, "In the end it's all because I'm not strong enough, if not." Speaking till here, his voice choked and he couldn't continue. The rest of the brothers sighed and said, "How can this be blamed on you? Bok Kwang, why do you have to blame yourself so much?" Yuan Tianjia thought to himself, "So it's because of this? No wonder I felt that something was wrong with Bok Kwang. With his melancholy personality, such an attitude is the right thing to do." Instantly, he felt relieved and his tone became even gentler. He said softly, "Book King, this matter really can't be blamed on you. Sigh, the weather is unpredictable and people are unpredictable. Life and death, victory and defeat, to us people of the pugilistic world, is really a common thing. Perhaps, although the Chess King died, he worked hard to bring you two brothers back safely. To someone like him who values friendship and loyalty, perhaps he died a worthy death and went to the netherworld with a smile. You don't have to blame yourself too much." The rest of the brothers echoed and comforted him. They asked themselves honestly, if they were in the same situation, they might also choose to sacrifice themselves to ensure that their brothers left safely. Thinking of this, their hearts were also filled with emotions. Perhaps, for the Chess King being able to protect Bok Kwang and the Art King to leave safely in such a dangerous situation, he had no regrets? Bok Kwang took a deep breath and said, "Before this, for so many years, I always had some reservations in my heart. I helped His Majesty practice martial arts, but I rarely went all out. Now, it actually caused my brother to die like this." Bok Kwang suddenly prostrated himself on the ground and burst into tears. "This is really my fault. I shouldn't have been selfish." The eyes of the brothers turned red again. Yuan Tianjia sighed, stepped forward and patted Bok Kwang's shoulder gently. He said gently, "It's okay. We'll definitely take revenge for this." Bok Kwang hit his head on the ground and said loudly, "I'll definitely do my best to assist His Majesty to achieve great success, subdue the Demon Empress and take revenge for my brother." Good. Yuan Tianjia was greatly comforted and nodded repeatedly. "I believe that the Chess King will be happy to know that you have such intentions. Your Majesty, I was seriously injured this time and almost lost my life, but it was a blessing in disguise. I accidentally comprehended a cultivation method that's more effective than before. Book Kwang stood up with a determined face. Your Majesty, only books can't make a breakthrough. It lacks the feeling of looking directly at the world. The picturesque feeling of looking at the world can't be completely integrated into the whole body and mind. That's right. Yuan Qinjie had actually been worrying about this for many years. Hearing this, his spirit was lifted. What exactly did you think of? Tell me in detail and see if I can give you some suggestions. This matter also needs a special medium to participate, the Art King. Book Kwang said solemnly, there's a saying that calligraphy and painting are inseparable. But for so long we've always neglected this point. Yuan Qinjie fell into deep thought. Books, of course, can be all-encompassing and bear all things. But paintings can be used to view thousands of miles of mountains and rivers in a more direct way. Book Kwang said, if we can add the texture of pictures to the all-encompassing land, then the comprehension will be really all-encompassing. At least it'll be much more powerful than before. Yuan Qinjie said, I'm afraid this matter won't be so easy. We've tried many methods but the results were minimal. Chapter 2278. Yesterday's update is repeated, today's chapter is free, I apologize to everyone. For the first time, Yuan Qinjie felt and personally tasted the true sweetness of the combination of calligraphy and painting. Although it was just the beginning, he could already feel that all his cultivation, including his mental energy, soul energy, spiritual energy, including everything that could be improved, were all improving crazily. All round, wholeheartedly improving to the extreme. Yuan Qinjie was overjoyed and excited. If he could improve at such an astonishing speed, he was absolutely confident that he could surpass Shui Leihan's current realm by the time this cultivation session was completed. Even when compared to a sage, he might not necessarily be inferior. He really didn't expect that the death of a chess master this time would be exchanged for the sincere help of Crazy Book and Painting King. In the end, he obtained such a rare benefit. Crazy Book's mental energy and soul energy surged madly like the tides of the Yangtze River. Tuer shouted, Your Majesty, don't be distracted. Please relax your mental energy completely. This is a critical moment, don't let all your efforts go to waste. Yuan Tianjiangsing felt ashamed in his heart. He was also an expert in cultivation. At such a moment he actually had to be distracted by external affairs and not hurry to cultivate, but had to be reminded by Crazy Book. If these two people regretted it, there would never be such a heaven-sent opportunity in the future. Yuan Qinjie made up his mind and completely let go, fully integrating his mind and body. Crazy Book poured his mental energy and soul energy into the specific area where the three people merged without any reservation. At the same time he paid close attention to the integration of the mental energy of the three people. He knew that he only had one chance. It was when the mental strength of the three of them had completely merged into one. And it was only at that time that he would be able to completely occupy the dominant position. But in order to achieve this, there was a necessary prerequisite. Yuan Tianjie's unreserved trust and completely open heart. Therefore he racked his brains and even didn't hesitate to damage his own foundation to create such an opportunity. In this process, as long as Yuan Tianjie wanted to improve, he had to be in full control of the situation. And once he reached that level, although he would lose a lot of his own cultivation, he could really go deep into Yuan Tianjie's inner world and know everything he wanted to know. When Crazy Book made this decision, he had completely cut off all his escape routes. If what happened back then wasn't Yuan Tianjie's doing and everything was his own misjudgment, then after what Yuan Tianjie did, there was no way he would stay here. He might even be killed on the spot by Yuan Tianjie out of humiliation. But if it was done by Yuan Tianjie, in that case, everything that he had done now would be meaningful. Crazy Book was also nervous. This was a gamble that he had lost before he had even gambled. No matter what the truth was, he was still the loser. But the only good thing was that one would die knowing while the other would die in confusion. The bookworm would rather die knowing the truth. After a while, the three people's spiritual energies finally fused together perfectly. You have me, I have him, and we have each other. This was the first time in millions of years that Yuan Tianjie had completely opened up his heart. All for his ambition, to reach the true peak of the heavenly layer. Although Yuan Tianjie also had his concerns, he was already destined to not turn back at this time. However, right at this moment, something unexpected happened. The Painting King's eyes were filled with intense worry, and he almost forcefully withdrew his domain. Crazy Book was keenly aware of this and suddenly shouted, all techniques originate from the same source. All techniques return to one. All the spiritual energies suddenly gathered together like rivers converging into the sea. Yuan Qingjie felt that his strength was in a state of rapid expansion. The frequency and degree of expansion even exceeded his expectations. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. However, at this moment something unexpected happened. Crazy Book suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and groaned, "What happened back then? What happened back then? Why did my beloved wife and concubine die? The enmity of the past, all encompasses. Do you have it? What happened back then? What happened back then? Who killed my wife? What happened back then? What happened back then? Today the water falls, the stone emerges." Reverse. Shu Kuang roared. At this moment, Yuan Tianjie's spirit was completely immersed in the rapid improvement of his cultivation. He had no idea that crazed bookworm had changed his original intention. He just opened up his spirit and spiritual power and wandered in the great Tao, absorbing, improving, repeating. By the time he finally felt that something was wrong, Crazy Book had successfully taken over the spiritual energies of the three people at this moment. Unknowingly, he quietly invaded the depths of Yuan Tianjie's mind. For a powerhouse like Yuan Tianjie, even if he was willing to let go of his spiritual defense and spiritual defense, even if he was completely unprepared and was controlled by someone, but this time was still very short. At most, it was just a moment. After a moment, his instinctive counterattack would form a terrifying tsunami-like counterattack, to break free from such control. Of course, this was mainly because Crazy Book's cultivation was far inferior to Yuan Tianjie's. So, Crazy Book only had a moment. But for the book maniac, this moment was enough. Because, at this moment, all the memories of Yuan Tianjie were equivalent to his memories. Crazy Book could browse everything, including those that absolutely couldn't be known by others, secrets. But Crazy Book never thought of it. What would he see? He had thought of the situation after he saw the truth. No matter what the truth was, when he saw what he saw now, he was really shocked beyond words. The process was very simple, very simple. Whatever Bookworm Crazy Heart suspected, he would look at it. And indeed he saw what he wanted to see. The first thing he saw was an image of a few people discussing something in a place filled with dense black qi. One of them had a face full of ferocious tattoos. He was definitely not someone Crazy Book knew, but judging from the voice, the owner of this voice was Yuan Tianjie. "My cultivation has reached a bottleneck, and I have to use the foundation of the Heavenly Imperial Court to further improve it. But what is the foundation of the Heavenly Imperial Court?" A man in black laughed strangely. "Isn't it simple? The so-called foundation should be the inheritance of the Heavenly Imperial Court." Inheritance? Makes sense. But how do we do it? Yuan Tianjie's eyes lit up. "We can do it this way, but how can they agree? We can do it this way, but in that way I'm afraid the sacrifice is too big. How can we really sacrifice our own people? We can design a layout and finally shift the blame to others, which is more beneficial to us. The specific operation can be done this way. In this way we don't have to worry about that person not being dead set on it." Then Crazy Book saw a scene that made him so angry that his eyes almost popped out. In that familiar and unforgettable mountain forest scene, he and his beloved wife and concubines were laughing and joking all the way. On this side, there were more than 10 great masters lying in ambush in different positions. All he could see was a murderous aura. Crazy Book almost coughed up blood when he saw this. Looking at himself and the others who were laughing and joking over there, he almost wanted to roar out loud. There were enemies ahead. Take a detour. However, all of this was just a memory. Fate was already decided and it had already happened. Everything was in the past. No one could change it. Watching his beloved concubines die one by one, and he was the first to be ambushed. Crazy Book's heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. While those people were attacking in a distant place, a man in black was watching all this with a smile. Yuan Tianjie. Then he saw his beloved wife carrying him all the way to escape, and Yuan Tianjie was following behind them at a moderate speed. The person who was chasing them all the way was also at a moderate speed. His beloved wife was finally dead. He was also at the bottom of the water. When he came out again, he coincidentally met Yuan Tianjie. Yuan Tianjie treated his injuries with great care, asked about his well-being, drank with him many times, talked with him for a long time, sighed and scolded him together. At that time, he really treated Yuan Tianjie as his benefactor and confidant. When he finally became sworn brothers with him and swore to help him take revenge, he was already loyal to him without the slightest bit of doubt. Ha! Crazy Book laughed bitterly, spitting out a few drops of blood. Finally, the truth was revealed. So this was the truth. Everything was planned by Yuan Tianjie, in order to make use of him to help him practice martial arts. And he was really an idiot, following Yuan Tianjia's plan and working like a horse for his biggest enemy, being used for more than 1,000,000 years. He was even complacent about it. He was even inexplicably grateful. In this world there was nothing more ridiculous than this. If there was a competition for the #1 idiot in the world in the Heavenly Imperial Court, it would definitely be him. Page by page his memories gradually flipped through. Then he saw Yuan Tianjia helping him find the so-called enemies, one by one. The first one was really the real one. He could see the shock on that person's face. It seemed like he was also a pitiful person who was deceived. After Yuan Tianjia personally performed the soul searching, that person gave up the other people. Then he was slapped to death by Yuan Tianjia. However, the other people who gave up the information were actually not members of those who had participated in the operation back then. Obviously, during the soul-searching process, Yuan Tianjia cleverly manipulated that person at the moment of his mental breakdown. Then he and Yuan Tianjia took revenge, along the way killing so many innocent experts one by one, and those real murderers were actually those people who helped him take revenge along the way, and he was even grateful to them. They were also the officials of the palace after he came to Dark Cloud Sky and helped Yuan Tianjia ascend to the throne. Those people who called him brothers every day. No wonder when those people saw him, the smile on their faces would always become somewhat strange. Chapter 2279. If I were those people, I would probably feel strange too. I killed your wife, killed your concubine, and killed the most important people in your life. But now you're being so intimate with me. Haha, and you're even thanking me sincerely. Is there anything more pleasing to the eyes than this in this world? An expert at the peak of the Saint Realm was being toyed with by me like a fool for an entire generation. Crazy Book felt like he was going to collapse. How could I be so stupid? How could I be played by someone, and by a group of people? Yuan Tianjia's spiritual fluctuation suddenly became stronger. Obviously, the backlash was coming. The Painting King's face was already showing an anxious expression. During this process, his spiritual power was suppressing Yuan Tianjia together with Crazy Book. He was even the main force suppressing Yuan Tianjia. Crazy Book was distracted by checking Yuan Tianjia's memories, so his mind was fluctuating greatly. If he only relied on Crazy Book, the backlash would have come long ago. But now he had already reached his limit. Crazy Book made up his mind and continued to flip through the deepest part of his memories. Then he saw darkness. All he could see were strange creatures. Everyone had tattoos on their faces. Crazy Book could no longer suppress the shock in his heart and exclaimed, "Extraterrestrial demon? Extraterrestrial demon?" At this moment Yuan Tianjia suddenly roared, his voice full of anger and shock. The Painting King behind him immediately let out a muffled groan, and blood spurted out from his 7 orifices. Yuan Tianjia's 7 orifices also spurted out a lot of blood, but the color of the blood was as black as ink. It was completely black blood. Yuan Tianjia's cultivation was much higher than the two of them. Even if the two of them worked together, they would not be able to defeat him. But now, his spiritual power had been completely controlled by Crazy Book. He hurriedly tried to retract, solidify, and seize control of the power. Then he counterattacked. This process was too hasty, and he also suffered heavy internal injuries. But he could not be anxious. He dared not be anxious. The book maniac had now grasped all his secrets, including his biggest secret, the secret that must never be known by others. Yuan Tianjia was filled with resentment and fear. Now, he had already reached the point where his heart was burning with anxiety and urgency. It would not be an exaggeration to say that his internal organs were burning and he was extremely frightened. Extraterrestrial demon. Yuan Tianjia was an extraterrestrial demon. This was his biggest secret. Once this news was made known to the world, all his efforts over the past several million years would be destroyed in the blink of an eye. All of his schemes would be for naught. How could he not be anxious at this critical moment? All this time, the book maniac had been helping him with his cultivation wholeheartedly. This process had been going on for millions of years. Who would believe that after millions of years of loyalty and devotion, there would be such a sudden turn of events? Switch sides. Even with Yuan Tianjia's scheming and deep foresight, he had never thought of this. Therefore, he had stepped into this trap without any warning. However, by the time he realized that he was being controlled, it was already too late. It was a foregone conclusion that his secret had been exposed. Without a doubt, the book maniac must have invaded the deepest part of his heart and learned all of his secrets. Therefore, Yuan Tianjia was almost in a desperate state, and suddenly erupted with all his strength. He would rather give up on this great harvest and escape as soon as possible. His goal was to break free from the book maniac's control as soon as possible. Boom! An abnormally violent explosion suddenly occurred in the secret chamber. This was an abnormally silent explosion, because what exploded was the purest form of spiritual energy. And spiritual energy. The three of them let out a blood-curdling scream at the same time. Their aura exploded, and the three of them were sent flying in 3 different directions. However, at the same time they pounced back at the same time. The three of them had the same killing intent and they used their killing moves at the same time. Yuan Tianjia's mouth was bleeding, and his eyes had turned completely black. His killing intent and dense black qi were constantly emitting out. It was the demonic black qi. He wanted to kill the book maniac. He must kill him. The book maniac must die. Because the book maniac had already grasped his biggest secret. If the book maniac didn't die, Yuan Tianjia wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. At this moment, the book maniac was also pouncing back with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. Kill Yuan Tianjia. Take revenge. Take revenge for his wife and concubines. For millions of years the book maniac had never forgotten. This million years of hatred, a million years of deception, a million years of endless humiliation. All of this had made the book maniac completely lose his mind. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Yuan Tianjia, the main culprit. Who would be willing to be deceived like this for millions of years? Millions of years. Thinking back to the past 1 million years, he was simply like a super big idiot. He was ordered around by his enemy and worked hard for his enemy. Moreover, he even did his best to help his enemy cultivate. Even so, he still had to be deeply grateful to his enemy and engrave it in his heart. For a super expert, this kind of humiliation had simply crossed all the bottom lines. There was no doubt that the book maniac was going all out at this moment. No matter what, he had to kill Yuan Tianjia. And the painting king was also desperately rushing back at the same time as he was blown away by the explosion. For his brother, the book maniac. There was absolutely no way he could be Yuan Tianjia's opponent. If the book maniac died now, then he could only let the hatred sink to the bottom of the sea forever. No one understood the gap between Yuan Tianjia and the book maniac better than the painting king, and no one understood the book maniac's obsession with the hatred of the past better than the painting king. Since that time, the book maniac's future was equivalent to being destroyed. The three of them were desperately trying to fly back at the force of the explosion. The three of them, under the intense explosion, actually managed to push the force of the explosion back. The air was constantly emitting sonic booms. There were actually countless cracks in the space, cracking and splitting open. This secret chamber was originally very small. The three of them were all top experts. In just a moment, or perhaps not even a moment, they had already rushed back at the force of the explosion. Bang bang bang, the three of them attacked at the same time. The book maniac fiercely held the judge's pen, while the painting king held the carefree fan. The two of them and the other two were already mentally prepared. They had hidden weapons in their hands, preparing for a last-ditch effort. Now, only Yuan Tianjia was bare-handed. However, Yuan Tianjia was not the least bit afraid in the face of the terrible situation in front of him. His left fist punched forward, and his right fist punched the painting king's carefree fan at the same time. Another extremely violent explosion rang out. The book maniac and the painting king staggered back at the same time. In such a head-on battle, the stronger one would win, and the weaker one would lose. There were no tricks, and the winner was decided immediately. Yuan Tianjia let out a long roar again, and rushed forward under the mountain of energy. One of his hands turned into a palm shadow, and fiercely floated down on the book maniac's head. At this moment, there was nothing more important than killing the book maniac. The palm shadow that filled the sky came down, but it was more of a concealment move. The real killing move was actually under his feet. Yuan Tianjia's feet moved strangely, and one of his feet suddenly stretched out without any warning. It crossed the limits of time and space and fiercely kicked the book maniac's stomach. Xu Kuang let out a blood-curdling scream. His body immediately tumbled backwards, but the 2 magistrate pens in his hands had already ruthlessly smashed into Yuan Tianji's calf. Yuan Tianji's leg was injured, but he didn't withdraw his leg. Instead, his other leg appeared without a trace like before, and kicked Xu Kuang's chest. Then another hand fiercely chopped down, intending to kill. However, a figure flashed like a ghost. It was the painting king who had rushed over with all his might. His 2 hands abruptly lifted up and firmly blocked Yuan Tianjia's descending giant hands. He roared angrily, "Why aren't you leaving yet?" These words were directed at the book maniac. As soon as the words left his mouth, A large amount of blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. This hand was Yuan Tianjia's unique skill, the Hand of Hell. Although the previous 2 kicks had already severely injured the book maniac, they were still unable to completely destroy the book maniac's combat power. This Hand of Hell was Yuan Tianjia's ultimate killing move. This attack had indeed used all of his strength, and it was Yuan Tianjia's strongest killing move. The Painting King had already been injured mentally, physically, and spiritually, and his combat power had been greatly reduced. Now that he had to take Yuan Tianjia's strongest killing move head-on, he was already beyond his power. It was just a touch and he was already seriously injured, but he still held on with all his might. It was only now that the abnormally powerful explosion finally spread out. With a boom, the entire secret room flew up into the sky. Yuan Tianjia flew back and rushed towards the exit. He actually gave up the opportunity to kill the Painting King at this moment, and rushed towards the exit instead. What? The Painting King and Book Maniac instantly understood why. They opened their mouths to shout, but blood spurted out from their mouths. Because of the huge explosion, they kept retreating. Their expressions were extremely anxious, and they wanted to shout out a warning, but they couldn't say anything. They could only let out a suppressed groan, and then spit out a mouthful of air that had almost exploded from their lungs. At the same time, they desperately shouted, "Be careful!" But Yuan Tianjia had already gone to the exit. For a peerless expert like Yuan Tianjia, how fast was his movement technique? He was actually much faster than the warning sound. The 7 great guards were like brothers of life and death for millions of years. Their relationship was so deep that they had already reached the point where they would live and die together. Since they couldn't kill the book maniac immediately, the 4 great guards outside had become existences that were enough to threaten Yuan Tianjia's life. Taking advantage of the fact that they still didn't know anything and were still loyal to him, he had to kill them as soon as possible. This was what Yuan Tianjia was thinking at this moment. Because if he really wanted to fight to the death with the Painting King, no matter what reason he had, they would definitely not help him. This could be seen from the fact that the Painting King had risked his life to help the book maniac deal with him this time. At this moment, Yuan Tianjia no longer had any hope of getting lucky in his heart. He couldn't let go of any possibility of his secret being exposed. In fact, when he realized that the book maniac had entered his heart and seen through his biggest secret, he had already made up his mind. He would definitely not allow the remaining 7 star guards to live. Chapter 2280. Yuan Tianjia's words angered the 3 spiritual bodies to the point that their bodies started to tremble. Now that things had come to this, Yuan Tianjia no longer thought of leaving any way out for himself. Now that things had come to this, there was no need to hide anything anymore. Everything had come to light. The 3 souls howled and charged over ferociously, not concealing their intention to risk their lives at all. "The 3 of you leave quickly." Heart King flashed and blocked them. "Your physical bodies have already been destroyed, and the power of your souls is a great supplement for the extraterrestrial demon. Leave quickly. Don't die and become this demon's supplement. Even until your death, you'll be providing him with assistance." The 3 souls howled unwillingly and rushed out. At their level of cultivation, there was no need to persuade them again and again. Although they were clearly unwilling, Heart King was right. They would rather die, and not become the demon's supplement. "Leave?" Yuan Tianjia chuckled. "If you can still leave, why would I tell you everything? You're simply naive to the extreme." He raised his right hand and a black light shot out. That black light suddenly exploded somewhere. Then with a boom, countless dense demonic aura surged out from the ground. In an instant it completely covered this space. In the sky, countless demonic aura flashed and actually condensed into shining stars, shining brightly. This Emperor's Demon King domain." Yuan Tianjia laughed loudly. "Since you've kowtowed to me for a generation and kowtowed to me for 1,000,000 years. First, you've been my dog for 1,000,000 years. You might as well contribute your last bit of life energy to this seat." He laughed wildly. "Heart King, Book King, Soul King, as a dog you must have the awareness of being a dog." Yuan Tianjia laughed strangely, complacent. Everything was in his hands and endless black demonic fog rolled out, filling the entire space. "Haha, us 7 brothers are blind and deaf. We've been deceived by others and committed countless sins. Even if we die here today, it's karma and we have no complaints." Originally, Heart King was already furious to the point where he almost couldn't control himself, but after hearing Yuan Tianjia's purely insulting words, he instead calmed down and said these words in an extremely calm tone. A large amount of blood was still flowing freely from his body. Although he had been seriously injured before, most of it was external injuries. Even though half of his body had been destroyed, it was still external injuries. Such an injury was certainly fatal for an ordinary cultivator, but for a high-level saint, it was a different matter. Especially after Heart King found out about Yuan Tianjie's true identity, he knew that it would be difficult for him to survive today. However, even though he was going to die, he couldn't just sit there and wait for death. At the end of his life, he had to take revenge for the great enemy in front of him. His wish came true and his vitality reappeared. The white holy light that was unique to high-level sages rose immediately. The speed of blood flowing on his broken body instantly slowed down. There were even many parts of his body that were gradually growing. Heart King said in a deep voice, "Yuan Tianjie, you can rest assured. None of us here will escape." He raised his head fiercely. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared fixedly at Yuan Tianjie. His voice was indifferent but carried endless resentment. "Yuan Tianjie, you have brought us eternal shame. If you don't die, us brothers will also. Even if we die, we will regret it." The brothers said these 4 words together. Even those 3 brothers who had already become soul bodies. Everyone's eyes shot out bone-chilling rays of hatred at the same time. At this moment, the hatred was deeper than the sea, the hatred was higher than the sky, and the resentment was world-shaking. That silent resentment had completely materialized at this moment. However, at this moment, Heart King's urgent words sounded in the hearts of Book King and Painting King at the same time. "No matter what method you use, you must escape. Don't argue. The few of us are already finished. There's no need to worry about our safety anymore. If you guys can't escape in the end, you will definitely be caught in one fell swoop. If you guys can't escape, this secret will be destroyed again. Then Yuan Tianjie will still be Heavenly Emperor Ink Cloud. He will still be a scourge to the Heaven Imperial Court. We have already served the evil demons for millions of years previously and committed a huge mistake, creating boundless sins. Our actions have already become the biggest laughingstock in the entire Heaven Imperial Court. But after we die, we can't be allowed to go down in infamy for thousands of years. Definitely spread the news that Yuan Tianjie is a demonic evildoer." Heart King said a life-and-death battle with Yuan Tianjie in an impassioned manner, but at the same time he was urging his brothers to leave with all his might. This was precisely Heart King's unique method, Heart Gate transmission. Heart King was ranked first among the 7 great guards precisely because no one could match his scheming. In the past, he had designed countless arrangements and schemes, burying too many of Ink Cloud Sky's opponents. Today, Heart King's final scheme was used on the number 1 person in Ink Cloud Sky. And the reason why Heart King would do this was actually very simple. Yuan Tianjie's cultivation base was far higher than theirs. No matter if it was a secret message or a soul power transmission, it would definitely be intercepted by Yuan Tianjie, and Yuan Tianjie would discover their true intentions and movements. Only by pacifying Yuan Tianjie's heart and secretly plotting would there be a glimmer of hope, and such an opportunity would only come once. Once missed, the outcome would be eternal damnation. No one would be able to get out, there would be no more hope. "Fight to the death? You said you want to fight to the death with me?" Yuan Tianjie laughed wildly and looked at Heart King mockingly. "With just you, these defeated soldiers?" Heart King slowly raised his remaining right hand, his expression solemn. "That's right, with just us, we want to drag you to the grave with us." His body and face suddenly shone with white holy light. It suddenly enveloped his badly damaged body, and for a moment, the brilliance was dazzling and indescribable. His entire person was bathed in the white holy light, as if a god had descended to earth. The white light on his body even continued to spread outwards. Heart King's voice slowly sounded. "Brothers, for millions of years, life and death, honor and disgrace, how many difficulties do we face? Walking through the pugilistic world, hand in hand to enter the Yellow Springs. Living together as companions, dying as a pile of bodies will also be peaceful. Today, the Heavenly Imperial Court is getting rid of the demon, why should we cherish this life for the heavens?" Book King and Painting King stood upright, their expressions solemn as they responded loudly, "Yes." The 3 kings who had already become spiritual bodies also had calm expressions on their faces. Heart King smiled carefreely and said gently, "In life, one relied on one's strength. Who can judge this body after it's dead? One's chest is filled with righteousness, to hell with the reputation." The brothers suddenly laughed in unison. What Big Brother said makes sense, to hell with the reputation. "Ah, brothers, let's all come together." Heart King laughed loudly and opened his arms. Come with me. Even if we die and our souls are destroyed, we can't become nourishment for the heavenly demon. We have already made enough mistakes, this is the last time, we can't make any more mistakes and we can't miss it. He opened his arms and opened his mouth. The three spiritual bodies laughed boldly. Big brother, today the three of us brothers will enter the Yellow Springs before you. Although we are ashamed in this life, we have a clear conscience. Yuan Tianjie was furious. Scoundrels, how dare you? He never thought that those three guards whose physical bodies were destroyed would actually do such a thing in order to avoid being swallowed by him. However, by the time he confirmed it, it was already too late. The spiritual bodies of the three kings exploded at the same time without hesitation, instantly turning into three streaks of white smoke and rushing into Heart King's wide-open mouth. Heart King's expression was calm and peaceful. He opened his mouth wide without any ill feelings, allowing the souls of his brothers to turn into pure energy and rush into his mouth. However, tears were pouring down from his eyes. What the three kings did was equivalent to giving up everything they had. In order not to become nourishment for the heavenly demon, they directly scattered the last of their primordial spirits and turned it into the purest energy in the world, rushing into their big brother's body, rushing into his meridians and turning into cultivation. The three of them actually didn't hesitate at all and acted immediately. It was also because of this that even someone as high as Yuan Tianjie couldn't stop them. The white light on Heart King's body suddenly expanded 10 times in an instant. The injuries on his body were completely healed at this moment as if miraculously. He slowly stretched out his left hand that had recovered and opened his 5 fingers. He looked at it attentively and said, "Heavenly demon, are you very disappointed in the current situation? Are you very surprised?" Yuan Tianjie looked at Heart King angrily and roared, "Bastard, I will definitely tear you into pieces." Yuan Tianjie couldn't stop the spiritual bodies from making their own choices, because his Demon King domain was still being set up. Even if it was completed, it couldn't stop them from making their own choices willingly. Forcefully swallowing was always an external force. Willingly offering but being able to instill all the energy in one's body into the target, this method of harming oneself to benefit others was understood by all advanced cultivators. However, those who would do this were 1 in 10,000, no, even if there were millions and millions of people, no one would be willing to do it. However, today at this moment, there were 3 people who were willing to offer at the same time, just to use their last bit of strength to help one person. There wasn't even the slightest bit of hesitation in the entire process. Yuan Tianjie could only watch as the powerful spiritual bodies of the 3 kings all turned into the purest energy that he coveted, and then disappeared into the mouths of others. Heart King smiled faintly. His eyes were full of deep meaning as he looked at Book King and Painting King. He said softly, "2 brothers, you should also be on your way." Book King and Painting King looked up to the sky and howled sorrowfully. As the 2 kings howled sorrowfully, Heart King had already made his next move at lightning speed. However, his next move was even more unexpected. He actually grabbed the vital part of his chest, tore open his own flesh and grabbed his own heart. Under everyone's shocked gazes, his heart, which had already become crystal clear, was still beating powerfully. Heart King had cultivated his heart all his life. At this moment, he had already reached the peak state of heart of 7 orifices. However, he didn't hesitate to crush his own heart that he had cultivated all his life. Chapter 2281. Yuan Tianjie was more than just disappointed. It was simply burning from the inside out. Heart King destroyed his unique heart of 7 orifices before the battle. It was equivalent to turning all of his cultivation, all of his energy, all of his soul, all of his spiritual energy and all of his consciousness into the purest battle energy. At this moment, his cultivation had increased by 3 times out of thin air. Everything had been turned into the energy of this battle. That was not all. The key was that as long as the battle ended, regardless of victory or defeat, Heart King's body, mind, soul and original spirit would all vanish. Not a single trace would remain in this world. Not to mention any energy would be devoured by the enemy. A king of a generation sacrificed all of his cultivation just for this battle. Yuan Tianjie roared and flew over, overflowing with killing intent. The person he hated the most now was no longer the Book King. It was the Heart King XN Wuhan. He had almost completely destroyed all of his hopes in front of his own eyes. In Yuan Tianjie's understanding, what Heart King said to Crazy Book Painting King was to let Crazy Book Painting King follow the example of the 3 kings who had already sacrificed themselves. Like them, he would also explode his original soul and let Heart King devour it. Then he would have a final battle with Yuan Tianjie. And this was undoubtedly something that Yuan Tianjie could not tolerate. Not only did his cultivation not improve greatly during this training, but because he forcefully counterattacked Crazy Book's invasion and suffered the explosion of his original spirit, he also consumed a lot of his life potential to destroy the four kings' physical bodies. Don't look at how powerful he was now. After a short while, his cultivation would decrease sharply. Originally, the three kings' original spirits were his best means to replenish himself. He didn't expect Heart King and the three kings to be so resolute and decisive, completely destroying his hope. And the remaining Crazy Book and Painting King was already Yuan Tianjie's last hope. No matter what, he couldn't be schemed against by Heart King. Naturally, he had to launch an attack immediately and not give Heart King a chance to devour. In the face of Yuan Tianjie's storm-like attacks, Heart King actually didn't dodge at all. Just like that, he directly rushed over without any tricks. When he rushed over, he took one last look at his two remaining brothers from the corner of his eye. Book King, Painting King. Brothers, please take care. We won't meet again. He couldn't say anything else. If he said one more word, all of their plans would be exposed. As for what Yuan Tianjie thought, it was no longer important. The more he attacked him, the easier it would be for his two brothers to escape. And all of his emotions, all of his blessings, all of his hopes, all of them stopped at the corner of his eyes. Perhaps he didn't even have the time to express them, or perhaps he had already expressed them thoroughly. As for the rest, he couldn't care less. Heart King X and Wuhan had already clashed head-on with Yuan Tianjie. Heart King suddenly let out a bitter laugh and said with a long sigh, "This king has let down Purple Firmament Heavenly Emperor. I am ashamed to face Zishao Tian. I hate that I couldn't go to the purple clouds and fight the heavenly demon together. Zihao, take today's battle as my apology to you." Yuan Tianjie's attack was like a violent storm, mixed with destructive power, crazily hitting Heart King. Heart King's face was calm. He used all his power to entangle Yuan Tianjie. He didn't fight back or resist, but only used his own cultivation to entangle Yuan Tianjie as much as possible, firmly entangling him. "If you guys still don't leave, the five of us won't die in peace." This was the last sentence that Heart King left behind. Then, without any warning, there was an explosion. This explosion was really earth-shattering, like the cries of ghosts and the howls of gods. Heart King showed all of his fighting posture, showing his unbounded determination to take revenge, but from the beginning to the end, he didn't fight with Yuan Tianjie at all. It was when his strength was at its best and strongest, he resolutely self-destructed. Because Heart King clearly knew that even if the three kings' original spirits were all instilled, even if he gave it his all, he was still not Yuan Tianjie's opponent. After a million years of understanding, no one was clearer than them about the strength of this heavenly emperor Mo Yun. In the end, he would still die in battle. Then, why not self-destruct when he was at his strongest? Only this way could he deal the most direct and thorough blow to Yuan Tianjie. Self-destruct at this time, the power was enough to seriously injure Yuan Tianjie. Moreover, the most important and most crucial thing was that this explosion could completely tear apart the Devil King domain. As long as there was a gap in the Devil King domain and Yuan Tianjie was seriously injured, then the Painting and Calligraphy Kings would have a chance to escape. Letting the Painting and Calligraphy Kings escape was Heart King's final wish at this moment. After a loud explosion, the Painting and Calligraphy Kings cried out, "Big brother!" Under the intense explosion, the two of them didn't hesitate and flew up at the same time, no matter how unwilling they were. Even though they would rather choose to fight to the death here with their brothers. But they knew their big brother's wish. They also knew their big brother's concerns. Yuan Tianjie's identity must be exposed at the first moment. Otherwise, if the Heavenly Emperor was actually a heavenly demon, when the real battle with the heavenly demons came, Heaven Imperial Court would definitely suffer a crushing defeat. This was undoubtedly a huge responsibility that no one could bear. With a flash in the sky, they disappeared without a trace. In a place filled with smoke, a few drops of clear tears fell silently from the sky. The tears of Book King, the tears of Painting King. With an extremely furious roar, Yuan Tianjie soared to the sky from the ruins covered in wounds. Although Heart King's self-explosion was close at hand, it still couldn't take Yuan Tianjie's life in the end. But this Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun's current conduct also didn't have that calm and unrestrained demeanor of the past. He became ferocious and terrifying, and he became battered and exhausted. At this moment he was even worse than a beggar. All his limbs were broken, his flesh was badly mangled and many white bone stubs were exposed. One of his arms was missing, and a section of tendons on his shoulder was still contracting. Even one of his legs was broken, his nose was completely gone, and one of his eyes was also missing. If this appearance was seen by people familiar with him, they definitely wouldn't dare to believe that this was the ruler of this world. Bah! Yuan Qingjie turned his head and spat out a black tooth. He gritted his teeth and said, "Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!" As he muttered and cursed angrily, dense demonic qi emitted from his body. Heavenly Demon Rebirth Great Technique. The current Yuan Qingjie already didn't have any spare time to curse or check his losses and casualties. What he needed to do now was to quickly recover in the shortest amount of time. If it exceeded a certain amount of time, even with the Heavenly Demon Rebirth Great Technique, he wouldn't be able to recover his body. After all, this was the self-explosion of a peak saint expert. That kind of extremely strong hatred attached to it was enough to make an expert with the ability to regenerate his body could only look on helplessly at his own disability, and be unable to do anything about it. Even Yuan Qingjie also didn't dare to be the slightest bit negligent. A burst of black fog rippled densely. After a long while, the black fog slowly drifted away, and Yuan Qingjie's voice muttered, "Drawing water with a bamboo basket is all for naught. Damn Xan Wu Hen." After this battle, Yuan Qingjie's original cultivation was reduced by no less than 80%. Now, although he made use of the Heavenly Demon Rebirth Great Technique to regrow his disabled limbs, the cultivation that he lost previously was something that even someone of his level couldn't bear. If he wanted to recover, it was absolutely impossible without a year and a half. Even if he recovered, it was also impossible for him to fully recover. The series of attacks previously had already damaged his foundation. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.